Happy Halloween, everyone. I'm sure my house is filled with pumpkins right now. My wife loves Halloween more than any other season, and we typically have spooky decor up year-round because of that. One of the items we have is this pillow with skeletons on it, and looking at it last year, back around Christmas time, I thought, I'm gonna have to replay the fossils in Generation 1. So what better time to do it than today on All Hallows Eve? I hope you enjoy me playing some Pokemon while I watch Nightmare Before Christmas, and my wife says every single word and sings every single song throughout the entire thing. These are the rules for the solo challenge. They have changed since the last time I played these two, and I think that might change the results. So, which one is better for a solo challenge of Pokemon Yellow, Kabutops or Omastar? In my previous video, I played a bunch of different formats with these Pokemon to explore them as exhaustively as I could back then. But technology has come a long way, and my skills have also dramatically improved over the previous 4.5 years. Just to get a sense for how much has changed over the last half decade, in my previous run with these Pokemon, I was not using rare candies. And in my first playthrough with them, I started as their prior evolutions and evolved during the playthrough. Plus, in that video, I even let Omastar use Double Team at some points. I'm not going to be doing that today. For base stats, Kabutops has 60 HP, 115 attack, 105 defense, 80 speed, 70 special, and a 15.63% chance to crit. Omastar, on the other tentacle, has 70 HP, 60 attack, 125 defense, 55 speed, 115 special, and a 10.55% chance to crit. Unlike a lot of duos in Generation 1, these two aren't clearly defensive and offensive. I think they wanted it to be that way, with Kabutops being physically offensive with more speed, and then Omastar be the defensive Pokemon with high defense and special. But that's not how it works in Generation 1. The high special stat just means it's going to be great using water and ice type moves. Because of that, these two don't really fill opposing roles. Kabutops has medium speed and it's a physical attacker, whereas Omastar has outrageous defense, bad speed, but it's a special attacker. In my opinion, this makes them a more interesting duo than, say, Nidoking and Nidoqueen. Nidoqueen is defensive, Nidoking is offensive. Because of that, Nidoking is better in a solo challenge, whereas Nidoqueen is going to be slightly slower. However, as I said in that video, I do prefer playing Nidoqueen just because it's the more defensive Pokemon. So maybe today I'm going to prefer playing Omastar, but that wasn't what I found the last time. In my previous video with these two, I far preferred playing Kabutops, and that comes down to Movepool. It starts with Scratch, Harden, and Absorb. Luckily, a grass type move to get by Brock. If it didn't have Absorb, then this comparison between the two would be completely uninteresting. Through level up, it gets Absorb again at 34, Slash at 39, Leer at 46, and Hydro Pump at 53. Okay, the TM and HM moves are where this Pokemon gets exceptional. It gets Swords Dance, and it also gets Body Slam. Those two moves together have the chance to carry Kabutops through the majority of this playthrough. It's also a water type, so it gets Bubble Beam, Water Gun, Ice Beam, Blizzard, and Surf. But as a rock type, it unfortunately does not have access to Rock Slide, which is the case for all three fossil Pokemon in Generation 1. Of all of them, Aerodactyl is the most tragic. Look at it hanging out here in the F tier alongside Kabuto, which actually outranked it, and even Nidoran Female was able to get a better time, but Aerodactyl's gonna have to keep hanging out down there because this video isn't about it. For Movepool, Omastar has Water Gun for Brock. It also has Horn Attack for any grass types, which is a big difference from it and Omanyte, which lacks Horn Attack and normal damage until level 34. Through level up, it gets Horn Attack, Leer, Spike Cannon, and Hydro Pump. Through TM and HM, it has a slightly different set. It lacks Swords Dance, but it gets Horn Drill. It still gets Body Slam, as well as Bubble Beam, Water Gun, Ice Beam, Blizzard, and Surf. I find it interesting that both of these Pokemon can learn Submission and Seismic Toss. I don't think I'm going to be using those moves. Also, why can Omastar learn Seismic Toss? I guess it could grab the enemy with its tentacles and throw them around, which is an image I absolutely love. By the way, Omanyte's tentacles are not big enough to use Seismic Toss or Submission. It does not get these moves on its set, which is an interesting distinction between first stage and final stage. Access to fighting moves, just what you want in Generation 1. The early game for both of these Pokemon is going to be extremely straightforward. Minimum battles all the way through the forest. As a rock type, we don't have to worry about the mandatory Bug Catcher because he can only use Tackle. And because Scratch has a ton of PP, I don't need to heal in Pewter City. I walk straight to the gym and fight Brock without a save. Geodude is not a one-shot with Absorb because I'm so underleveled. It's okay, I two-shot and it can't do any damage with Tackle. Onix is a little bit different because it could go for Bide on turn 1, then take damage from Absorb over the next 2 turns and potentially knock Kabutops out on the next turn. But if it gets a 3-turn Bide, or if Absorb gets a critical hit, which it does here, there's not really a way for Brock to win. I two-shot his ace and that's that. First badge earned for Kabutops in 2 minutes and 25 seconds. Omastar plays the early game the exact same way. The only difference here is that I can one-shot Brock's Pokemon because Water Gun gets the same type attack bonus and Omastar has ridiculous special. These advantages let it edge out a faster time of 2 minutes and 19 seconds. I'm going to call these my first playthroughs with these species, by the way, because I played them with such different rules previously and I've never run them in my modern format. So we're going to go through these initial first playthroughs and then do optimization, and I'll complete follow-ups after. So this video is going to be in my standard format, unlike the Nidos that I released earlier in the month. With Omastar, it's doing so well with Water Gun on Route 3 that I fight the last, so this is minimum battles. I could have fought 2 more Pokemon for a little bit more experience by fighting the bug catcher just underneath her, but I don't think that Omastar is going to need the additional experience. Inside Mount Moon, I fought 1 optional trainer, the Hiker, since his Pokemon takes so little time to knock out. Although I'm not sure that he's needed, I'll probably be cutting this battle for my follow-up attempt. Finishing the 2 mandatory battles in the cave, I'm level 15 by the time I make it to Cerulean City. As a rock type, I didn't think it made sense to take on Misty right away, so instead I fought the rival. There is no editing of this footage, I did not save before him. The reason is that powerful special attackers just breeze through this entire team. His Spearow can't lower your offensive stat with Growl, his Sandshrew is never going to get 2 attacks in, and then as a rock type, I shrug off all the normal moves that the Rattata and the Eevee can throw at me. Route 25 is a little bit annoying if I haven't already fought Misty and got access to Bubble Beam. With it, I probably could have one-shot this Pidgey instead of 2-hitting with Water Gun. This does make this battle slightly risky since Sand Attack could mess me up. I'm lucky that it doesn't. You know what else is risky? This one trainer that has Mankey, it can go for low kick and deal a lot of damage. This one crits, leaving Omastar on 8 hit points. It's lucky that Karate Chop is a normal move in Generation 1 because if it was fighting, I would have lost here. Instead, Omastar survives with 3 hit points and wins. I don't think I need Seismic Toss for this playthrough. I'm gonna skip it this time around. Maybe I'll have to reflect on that choice going into the next run, but I really don't think so. At the end of Route 25, I have to fight this lass. She is so brutal for Omanyte, but for Omastar, she's really not that bad. I can two-shot her Oddish with Horn Attack, and their Absorbs don't do enough damage because of our high special stat. They also don't heal the Oddish enough for it to survive an additional hit. If it did, then this battle might be scary, but even if I cut the one optional Hiker, she still wouldn't be doing enough damage. Right before Misty, I just happened to level up to 21 on the Junior Trainer, and I made an impulsive choice to use 2 rare candies to level up to 23 to make this battle just a little bit easier. I also teach Omastar Bide because this move is exceptional against the second gym leader when you're using a water type. Misty has good AI, meaning she is only going to be choosing water moves against a rock-type Pokemon, which is really good, because that'll do more damage to Omastar, allowing me to use Bide on the Starmie and knock it out quickly. The only way she doesn't do damage here is if she uses an X-Defend, and she does, but still Bide does enough damage to knock the Starmie out in 1 turn. Omastar gets a second gym split of 9 minutes and 58 seconds. It earns itself the Bubble Beam TM, which I teach right away in the place of Bide. Against the Rocket outside of Cerulean City, there's the potential for some annoyances because I'm not able to one-shot his Drowsy with Bubble Beam. I could be put to sleep here with Hypnosis, which would just make the fight stretch on for a really long time. Pound's not going to do much damage, and Confusion will do more, but still not very much. Omastar's special right now is 70. With Bubble Beam, I can one-shot all of Sandy's Pidgey, so there's no risk of Sand Attack. On the SSN, I pick up the TM for Body Slam, and I teach it in the place of Horn Attack. I grab the Gentleman Candy, but I'm gonna skip Rest in this playthrough. I promise you, I will come back and talk about this move extensively, but for the first run, I'm not going to have access to it. The rival on the SSN is a very similar battle to the one in Cerulean City, so as a special attacker, there's no issues here. But coming up next is Surge, and he is an electric type specialist, so maybe these water type Pokemon are going to have problems. His only Pokemon is Raichu. Surge is incompetent. He does not have good AI. Instead, he uses Mega Kick against Omastar, and it does 11 hit points of damage. Well done. Bubble Beam is going to 3-hit the Raichu. Surge uses X speed, even though Raichu is already faster. I hit with another Bubble Beam, dropping Raichu's speed back to its original value, and Surge chooses Mega Punch. It does get a critical hit, but I'm not scared. One more Bubble Beam is all that it takes. Omastar gets itself a third gym split of 13 minutes and 4 seconds. Will Kabutops be able to match pace in this section of the game? And the answer is no, it won't. It had a disadvantage during the Brock split, and that continues over Route 3. I have to use Scratch or Absorb here, both moves that are far worse than Water Gun or Horn Attack. While it is moving slower here, when it gets to Mount Moon, it does have one advantage that Omastar doesn't. Better type coverage, because I can pick up the TM for Water Gun, and now I have both a Water and a Grass type move. But this isn't really a huge advantage. Water type damage is helpful, but the discrepancy between Kabutops' physical attack and its special is significant, and so this move used by Kabutops is just never going to be as good as when Omastar uses it. I think for that reason, when I was a kid, I always preferred playing with Omastar just because its special stat was so high. Just like with Omastar, I fight the hiker inside of Mount Moon, and then I battle the rival in Cerulean City. While I am doing less damage here, the fact that I have special moves is just going to be enough for this fight. I wasn't sure if I was going to one-shot the Sandshrew, so it might have slowed things down with Sand Attack. Fortunately for me, I get a critical hit with Water Gun, and it does go down over one turn. The guy with Mankey on Route 24 doesn't go for Low Kick, so I don't have to worry about him. When Mankey's using Scratch, it's pretty bad against these Pokemon. If he had good AI, he would actually be scary against Rock and Normal types, but he has no idea what he's doing, so typically he isn't going to cause problems. Okay, back to talking about disadvantages for Kabutops in the early game. Because of its lower special, Misty's water moves are going to do much more damage, and I wasn't sure if Bide was going to be the right play against her. It might seem like Absorb would be great, but base 20 power, even when super effective, is just going to be equal to Scratch in terms of damage. Gaining back health will be slightly good, but I don't think that's the play. Instead, I'm going to fight the optional hiker, move the junior trainer out of the way, and pick up the TM for Seismic Toss. This will help me beat Misty consistently. If you're worried about Kabutops having a lower special stat and then the Lass with her Oddish causing problems, that isn't the case. The fact that we have a higher physical attack means that Scratch is doing enough damage to two-shot the Oddish even when they heal. I do get hit by Sand Attack from the Pidgey, which could have caused a reset if I got very unlucky, and I did get fairly unlucky. I had misses, so I got hit by an additional Sand Attack, and by the time I knocked out the Pidgey, my confidence was shaken. Against Oddish, I do almost enough damage to one-shot, but then it attacks with Absorb. Kabutops misses, gets hit by a second Absorb, going down to 10 hit points. Okay, Sand Attack, please don't mess this up for me. I hate accuracy drops in Generation 1 so much. I just have to go for Scratch. I do, it hits, and Oddish goes down. With the additional experience from the Seismic Hiker, I am close to level 22 before Misty, but because of this, I would have to fight one more optional trainer if I wanted to use rare candies like with Omastar, so we decided against that approach. Instead, I'm just going to teach Seismic Toss in the place of Absorb, and then fight Misty. Starmie has exactly 59 HP, so as long as your Pokemon is level 20, you will always 3-shot using Seismic Toss. The difference here is if you're level 20 and you fight the Staryu, then you have to 3-hit because it has 41 HP. But if you're 21 like Kabutops is, then you 2-shot. I level up to 22, Starmie comes out, it goes for Bubble Beam, doing a decent amount, and then Misty uses X Defend. I thought this was the perfect scenario for me, but then Starmie gets a critical hit and Kabutops faints. Okay, that's the first reset in these playthroughs. I'm getting worried about Kabutops. Last time around, it was pretty dominant in these runs, but today Omastar is really outperforming in the early game. And I think Misty might be biased towards Omastar because her Starmie crits for a second time, giving Kabutops another reset. I don't think I should have this many problems against Misty. If she uses an X Defend, I should be fine, and the Starmie shouldn't crit in every battle. But of course it does for a third time in a row. This time, Kabutops' health was high enough that it survives with 5 hit points. And then, in the moment that matters most, Misty chooses to use an X Defend and Kabutops defeats her. I was wondering if Sandy might be a little bit more difficult for Kabutops since it has a lower special stat, but Bubble Beam is still doing enough damage to one-shot all of her Pokemon, allowing me to avoid Sand Attack. On the SSN, I pick up a Body Slam, and this is where Kabutops is going to start its rally. A strong physical move makes quick work of the rivals team. Now, it's time to see if Surge can win with the luck of the draw. And yes, he can. He goes for Thunderbolt right away with Raichu and one-shots Kabutops. I think Omastar might survive hits like that because of its higher special. Even though Kabutops is the faster of the two Pokemon, it can't outspeed the Raichu, so I just have to rely on Surge doing bad things, like missing Mega Kick, then using an X speed, and Body Slam 2 shots, so I win on my second attempt. Kabutops gets a third gym split of 14 minutes and 58 seconds. I think now we should compare the early games between these two. At Brock, Omastar had a lead of 6 seconds, but by the time I've defeated Surge, its lead has increased to 1 minute and 53 seconds. To get a sense of how much of a lead this is for Omastar, let's pop over to the tier list. I'm going to filter this to show only water and rock type Pokemon. You can see that the rock type doesn't perform nearly as well as the water type does. Fully evolved water types tend to be either S tier or A tier. Actually, I just noticed that the middle evolutions are kind of like bread sandwiching in all of the final stage water types. Poliwhirl is the best ranked water type right now, with Wartortle being at the end of the A tier. I think that Omastar and Kabutops are both definitely going to be either S tier or A tier Pokemon, and results between Pokemon in these tiers usually differ by very small margins. The difference between Starmie and Lapras is exactly 1 minute. The difference between Lapras and Cloyster is 14 seconds. Considering the data, it seems like right now Omastar is on track to significantly outperform Kabutops. In the next section of the game though, Kabutops is going to get its other major differentiator, Swords Dance. Before that though, it needs to get through the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet. The Wrapping Lass is first, but Body Slam is able to one-shot all of her Pokemon. The Pokemaniac inside of the tunnel can be managed with Bubble Beam for the Cubone and then Seismic Toss for the Slowpoke. I wanted to save Body Slam PP, and against the second Pokemaniac you can see that this is the better move, especially when I'm critting and paralyzing. The Status Condition Junior Trainer can cause significant issues if you don't one-shot the Oddish, but Kabutops crits. I hope that that's a one-hit range. I don't think it is though, because the Bulbasaur survives, and it is worse defensively when compared with the Oddish. They both have the same HP. Oddish's defense stat though is 2 points higher. I might have to save for this fight in follow-up playthroughs because she can do a lot of damage. Look at the Bulbasaur's Vine Whip. It brings Kabutops down to orange health. For both of these Pokemon, the self-destructing Hiker is not an issue because they have Bubble Beam. As a Swords Dance user, I am almost 100% sure that Kabutops does not need to stop by the Rocket Hideout to get an additional rare candy. In the department store, I purchased myself 2 Carbos. These are typically the best generic vitamins if you're not entirely sure what you should be buying. I went to fight the rival in Pokemon Tower next, and I'm making a small mistake here. I think I should have picked up the Ice Beam TM to make this fight a little bit easier, as well as to help against the following Chandler. Agatha Jr.'s Ghastly can cause significant problems if you're not one-hitting, but even with Ice Beam, I wouldn't be, since Bubble Beam technically has more effective power. There is upside though using Ice Beam because I could crit, but I could also freeze. But the result of this battle made me feel a little bit more secure in my decision to skip Ice Beam, since Bubble Beam is able to two-shot and Kabutops doesn't have problems. Once I defeat Jesse and James at the top of the tower, I can now access Silph in Saffron City, so that's going to be my next destination, because I want to add Swords Dance to my set right away. One thing you'll notice is that I've kept Harden up until this point. It's just because I thought that maybe it would be useful for badge boosts, but Kabutops hasn't needed them yet. I teach Swords Dance in its place, do some additional training inside of Silph, and then I head to Cycling Road. I didn't feel fully confident fighting Rival 5 right away. I continue my grinding against the bikers here, which give great experience yields, and then I complete the Safari Zone. But I chose to hold off on teaching Surf in the place of Bubble Beam. There's no move deleter in Generation 1, so once I make that choice, it's going to be permanent. Digging out of the Safari Zone takes me back to Celadon City, and I think fighting Erika next makes sense. Instead of the Cool Trainer, I'm going to battle the Beauty though, because this Execute doesn't know any grass type moves. But Erika does. What I'm really banking on here is that I'm going to have some time to set up with Swords Dance. Tangela is first. It's going to do a lot of damage with both Mega Drain and Vine Whip, but I think after one Swords Dance I'm going to be able to sweep her team. And I need to, because Mega Drain does more than half. Body Slam isn't able to one-shot her lead. Okay, this is really bad. However, the Tangela gets paralyzed, and Erika, instead of attacking, uses a Super Potion, allowing me to knock it out with Body Slam on the next turn. From there, both Weepinbell and Gloom are less bulky, so Body Slam takes care of them in one hit each. I definitely lucked through this fight with Kabutops. Fighting her at a higher level for my follow-up playthroughs is going to be one way that I can mitigate risk for Kabutops, because even Swords Dance can't make the next gym leader fully consistent. Inside the Fuchsia City gym, once I defeat the first juggler, I have leveled up to 39, and I decided to use 4 rare candies to boost Kabutops to 43 over damage rounding thresholds prior to Koga, but it still doesn't have enough speed to move first against Venomoth. Also, my path to victory here is going to require luck. Koga has good AI, so he sees Sleep Powder as super effective against rock and water type Pokemon. This means Venonat 1 and Venonat 3 are always going to spam the status condition until you've been put to sleep. Then Koga's AI modification 1 will kick in and he's going to prevent himself from using status moves, choosing Psychic because Tackle is resisted. I'm confident that Kabutops is going to be able to one-shot all of his Pokemon with the exception of Venomoth after one turn of Swords Dance. What I'm banking on here is Venonat missing Sleep Powder, which is exactly what happens, or Kabutops waking up from sleep early enough to then strike back and sweep his team. As I predicted with +2, all 3 Venonats are one-shots with Body Slam. What about Venomoth though? Well, it's doing decent damage with Psychic, roughly 1/3, but that's not enough to save Koga, because I do far more than half, taking the Venomoth down to red with a single Body Slam. Also, Venomoth is not always locked into Psychic, it can also use Leech Life, which does very little damage. Kabutops gets a 5th gym split of 29 minutes and 4 seconds. In the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet section of the game, I think that Omastar is slightly worse when compared with Kabutops. For example, the Wrapping Lass is more difficult because I have to use Body Slam, which cannot one-shot the Oddish. I'm lucky I got Paralysis and she didn't go for Stun Spore, so I just kept trying to win. The second Oddish also survives because they both have the same stats. This one goes for Poison Powder, which is perfect. I don't have to waste time getting consistently wrapped here. Also, Omastar is able to one-shot the Bellsprout, so this battle isn't as difficult as other water types like Starmie, which has a brutal time here. Alright, are you ready for surprising damage range of the day? Which move do you think is best against this Pokemaniac's Slowpoke? It seems like it would be Body Slam, but it's actually Bubble Beam. You may see other weird moments like this where I'm prioritizing water moves which are not very effective against targets instead of using Body Slam. The reason is I'm looking at the damage calculations from RBYXP Router, and I know that Body Slam is the worst move to choose. I guess it could paralyze, which is sometimes nice, but if I can knock out the enemy Pokemon in one less turn with Bubble Beam, I'm always going to be going for it. The Status Condition Junior Trainer is a different story. Body Slam is better here against her grass types. This is because they have higher special stats when compared with their defense. This puts Omastar at risk of getting hit by Sleep Powder on turn 1 from Oddish, and then hit by 4 times effective Absorbs over and over. I got lucky today because the Oddish just went for Absorb and got a Generation 1 miss. She completely dropped the ball here. There are some differences in Celadon City. I buy Calcium instead of Carbos with Omastar since I'm just making peace with the fact that I'm going to be moving second against a bunch of Pokemon. I would rather do enough damage to knock everything out in one hit if I can. I also didn't neglect to pick up Ice Beam, so I teach this in the place of Water Gun. The rival in Pokemon Tower is really simple with powerful special moves, and the Chandler are the same as they would be with Kabutops. I can still lose here because of Confusion, Nightshade, and Paralysis from Lick, but Omastar doesn't in this run, and I think it's very unlikely for both of these Pokemon to lose against the Chandler since they only need 4 turns to win. And the 2 other mandatory Chandlers on the top floors aren't as much of a threat since they only have 1 Pokemon. After receiving the Poke Flute, I got seduced. I thought that Omastar's high special in combination with Ice Beam would be enough to take on Erika right away. I should not have done this. First of all, I decided to fight the Beauty because I didn't think I needed the experience from the Cool Trainer. However, then I Gen 1 miss with Ice Beam and get put to sleep, wasting a bunch of time. This is just annoying. I'm still going to be fine here. This Execute doesn't know any grass type damage dealing moves, so I'm gonna move on to Erika, and that's where the true problems really start for Omastar. Ice Beam is not doing enough damage to one-shot the Tangela. It hits with Mega Drain and does so much. While Omastar does survive and knock out her lead, I haven't increased my damage like I did with Kabutops. Due to this, Ice Beam is not able to one-shot the Weepinbell. This is another example of grass types having decently high special stats, so if I'm using special moves against them, I'm just not doing enough. I get put to sleep and then knocked out by Razor Leaf. That's Omastar's first reset, and this is just player knowledge. If I had known to fight Erika at a higher level, I could have instead gone to Cycling Road first and done some additional training. Unlike with Kabutops, when I finish the Safari Zone, I'm going to teach Omastar Surf right away. This will be its go-to move throughout the entire playthrough, even against a bunch of targets that resist it. With Omastar, one of the reasons that I fought Erika as soon as I could was because there's no real advantage to going to Silph now. I don't get access to Swords Dance, and the rival can be difficult with fully evolved Pokemon until they're around level 40. As the slower Mon, Omastar is also underspeeding the Kadabra on the rivals team, which is a little bit worrying, especially if I take damage from Cloyster as well as Magneton before making it to his penultimate Pokemon. Anticipating some difficulties against the rival, I did some additional training here. I leveled to 38 and then used 4 candies to bring Omastar up to 42. Luckily, Sandslash is never going to be a problem. Cloyster, on the other hand, I have to use Surf against for special damage. This means I can get hit by Clamp. It does less damage than I was expecting, and then against Magneton, I'm going to continue using Surf. It goes for Thunder Shock, doing more than I was expecting, but still Omastar has more than half. Because of this, I'm not scared about Kadabra using its most powerful move, Psybeam. Body Slam takes care of it, and then I clean up the Flareon. After finishing Giovanni, Omastar's level 44. I was fairly confident that now I could fight Erika, and yes, I was right. Ice Beam can one-shot the Tangela, and with that, her final 2 Pokemon aren't a threat. I went to fight Koga next. I thought that maybe just spamming Surf I would be able to one-shot all of the Venonats and avoid Sleep Powder. And I was right, at level 46, Omastar sweeps until the Venomoth. It's faster in going for Psychic, but Omastar's outrageous special stat just shrugs off these hits and I 2-shot. Omastar gets a 5th gym split of 28 minutes and 50 seconds. Now, if we look at all the splits up until this point, you'll notice that they're not really comparable, because Kabutops has not yet fought the rival in Silph. So we'll have to wait until after the final Giovanni battle to get a better sense for how these two are stacking up against each other. Let's go back to Kabutops now and see how it handles the end of the mid-game. With access to Swords Dance, it didn't feel like the right choice to fight trainers on Route 21, or even inside of Blaine's gym. I think that the setup move is just going to carry me throughout the end of this run. So now, let's take on the Fire-type specialist. In a lot of my playthroughs, I have unexpected losses to Blaine. He's really good in Pokemon Yellow, however, that's not going to be the case. These are 2 Pokemon that truly do not care about his team. The Rock type walls his normal moves, and then the Rock and the Water type together mean his Fire moves do essentially nothing. I think the only potential way for Blaine to win here is maybe Confuse Ray and Kabutops knocking itself out, or maybe the Arcanine getting a burn with Fire Blast or Flamethrower. The likelihood of both of those things happening is so low though. I just set up to +6 and then sweep his team with Body Slam. With the Volcano badge, Kabutops now has a boost to its special stat, and there's only one thing left for me to do. I have to go back to Silph now and fight the rival. Bubble Beam's able to one-shot Sandslash. I can use Seismic Toss to 2-shot the Cloyster. I snuck in 1 Swords Dance here, and I got hit by Clamp many times in the process, going under half health, which is really not ideal. But Magneton's next, and with 1 turn of setup, I'm able to one-shot with Body Slam. I'm faster than Kadabra, one-hitting, and Flareon doesn't stand a chance. At the end of this fight, Kabutops levels up to 46 and has the chance to learn Leer. Oh, what a great move to be learning at such a high level. While I fight Giovanni, you might be wondering why I haven't taught Kabutops Surf in the place of Bubble Beam. Well, Bubble Beam is just good enough to knock out Pokemon like the Rhyhorn here in a single hit. And for pretty much every other target, just attacking with Body Slam is enough. For example, against Nidoqueen. While I'm not able to one-shot, I take it down to a tiny sliver of health and paralyze, and its double kick can't do anywhere near enough damage to knock out Kabutops. One of the reasons I want to hold off on teaching Surf is because Kabutops has other moves that'll be useful in the place of Seismic Toss and Bubble Beam. One of these is Mimic, which I pick up now. Inside the Saffron City Gym, I fight no optional trainers, continuing the trend from earlier, and then I go up against the Psychic type specialist. Abra's first. The question here is, do I want to set up against it or just knock it out? I think it's safer to go for the knockout here and then try to set up at least once on the Kadabra. If I do, I will speed badge boost myself so that Kabutops is faster than the Alakazam. Kadabra just fails recover, I get a free turn of setup and then one shot with Body Slam. Alakazam is last, of course I'm faster now, and even though Kabutops gets a critical hit with Body Slam, it's more than enough. Yes, in Generation 1, whenever you use Swords Dance, you will do more damage with a regular hit when compared with critical hits, since critical hits do not do exactly 2 times damage like they do in later generations. Their damage multiplier is based on the user's current level, and it approaches 2, but it never reaches it. Plus, I would need a very high level to get close to 2. Instead, the multiplier is going to be somewhere around the range of 1.8 to 1.9. Inside the Viridian City Gym, I am not going to fight any trainers, but I am going to use rare candies, taking Kabutops up from level 48 to level 53. There's a small subtlety in this battle. It doesn't really make sense to set up on the Dugtrio and risk it hitting me with Dig or Earthquake, especially when those moves can get critical hits since Dugtrio is fairly fast. It has a 23% chance to crit on any turn. It could also use Sand Attack, which would be devastating. Instead, I'm just going to knock it out with Body Slam, move onto the Persian, a normal type which only has normal type moves, and then set up with Swords Dance here while it tries to set up Double Team. From there, Body Slam 1 hits Persian, Body Slam 1 hits Nidoqueen, as well as Nidoking, and that leaves only Rhydon, which Bubble Beam is strong enough to one-shot. I still don't need Surf. Kabutops got a time of 35 minutes and 9 seconds. But before we go back to Omastar, let's quickly finish off everything needed to get to the league for Kabutops. The rival is next. In this case, I can just set up Swords Dance on his Sand Slash. This one does not have Sand Attack, so it's essentially free. I go to +6, then use Bubble Beam and one-shot. From there, I can just spam Body Slam against everything. It even one-shots Cloyster. However, I get a critical hit against Magneton. Remember, this is going to do much less damage in this case, because I'm bypassing all of my beneficial stat changes. Unfortunately, I am unable to knock out Magneton with it surviving on a sliver of health, and then it uses Thunder Wave. This is not a good situation. Luckily, my Body Slam paralyzed it, so I'm still faster than it on the next turn, and I can knock it out without it attacking with Thunder Shock. But both Kadabra and Flareon are going to move first against Kabutops. Kadabra goes for Reflect, my one-shot. Flareon comes in next. It goes for Flamethrower, which does essentially nothing. I'm paralyzed. It doesn't really matter. Flareon just misses Smog. Now, that miss probably happened because Smog was calculated to do less than 1 damage, and Generation 1 rounds down to 0, saying that the move misses if that's the case. My follow-up Body Slam one-shots the Flareon. Inside Victory Road, I'm going to pick up the rare candy, but I'm not going to fight any of the trainers. Then, before Lorelei, I teach Mimic in the place of Seismic Toss, and now Kabutops is ready for the Elite Four. Now, Kabutops might have had an easy time against Blaine, but Omastar is even better here. As a kid, I revived Omanyte, and I was basically soloing the game with a Butterfree, but I had unfortunately unlearned Sleep Powder, so I wasn't able to get by Blaine with my primary bug type. Instead, after reviving Omanyte, I simply fought Blaine knowing Surf, and then crushed his team with a level 30 Pokemon. In this battle specifically, probably the worst thing possible takes place. I get confused and hit myself a bunch. Omastar is slower than all of Blaine's Pokemon. That said, I don't really care. Once Ninetales goes down, the worst thing that could possibly happen is getting Fire Spinned over and over again and then the Rapidash knocking me out, but the chance of that happening is extremely low. Blaine does not have good AI, so he's randomizing his move choice, and Fire Spin only has 70% accuracy. I make it to the Arcanine. This one gets a critical hit with Takedown, and Omastar does go to Orange Health as a result, but I don't care. I two-shot with Surf, and he's done. With the Volcano badge, Omastar's already outrageous special just gets even better, and now when I use Withdraw, I can increase my special further. The problem is, Sabrina's next, and my speed is 95, so I am slower than her Abra. I went for Body Slam right away, hoping that I would avoid Flash. Unfortunately, I don't, so I have my accuracy lowered. Luckily, the physical move one-shots her lead. Kadabra's next. It goes for Psywave, which is fixed damage, so it bypasses my special stat, and it does really good damage in this case, almost half. My Body Slam is not able to one-shot the Kadabra, but it does paralyze, so now Omastar is faster. I knock it out, move on to Alakazam. This one goes for a Reflect, then I miss Body Slam. Okay, so I should use Surf here for higher damage with special moves. Alakazam tries a full health recover. Surf does more than half. Sabrina uses an X defend, and my next Surf knocks out her ace. Unlike Kabutops, which has decent speed and is spamming Swords Dance, Omastar is going to have to rely on badge boosts with Withdraw. Because of this, I need to carefully plan my levels so that I'm not leveling up in the middle of a battle and losing my badge boosts. To ensure that I'm not wasting experience, I fight one optional trainer inside the Viridian City Gym, leveling up to 49, and then I use a single rare candy to go to 50 before taking on Giovanni. Unlike Blaine, I think Omastar has the disadvantage against Giovanni when compared with Kabutops. It's slower than Dugtrio, so it can get hit by a Sand Attack, a crit from Dig or Earthquake, or potentially Fissure on turn 1. But if Giovanni is sponsored by Guard Spec, then he does nothing. I hit with Surf and Dugtrio goes down. Now that I've made it to the Persian, I could set up, but I decided against it, just trying to sweep his team. I'm already faster than the Nidoqueen. I'm not faster than the Nidoking, but it just goes for double kick, not doing much damage, and then Surf knocks it out. And now the battle's over. Rhydon's easily a one-shot. For the 6th rival, it makes a lot of sense to set up with Withdraw on the Sand Slash, but I didn't even try. Instead, Surf one-shots, Ice Beam one-hits the Execute. I can use Surf to two-shot the Cloyster, and then against Magneton, I don't really have a good move, but I can just use Surf here and knock it out over 2 turns. Luckily, it doesn't go for Thunder Wave. I tank the Thunder Shock, move on to Kadabra. It goes for Psychic followed by Psybeam, doing a lot of damage, and Omastar is brought to the brink. It has 29 hit points remaining, but what's Flareon going to do? Omastar's faster, so it can't even be trapped by Fire Spin. Mirroring what Kabutops did, I grab the rare candy in Victory Road, and I also teach Mimic before Lorelei. But in this case, I have to give up one of my good offensive moves. And I think with Omastar's outrageous special, it makes most sense to get rid of Body Slam now. Okay, now it's time for these two to face the Elite Four. In the first battle, I make a misclick. I'm using Withdraw, and then I accidentally click Mimic, and I have to steal a move from Dugong, and then I accidentally click too quickly and choose Bubble Beam. So I just reset. I want to be mimicking a different move, obviously. My strategy here is damage the Dugong on turn 2, then have it use Rest, and this would have worked if it didn't drop my speed with Bubble Beam, so maybe I should be using Surf on turn 1 to drop its HP so that it goes to sleep. I want to be able to squeeze in withdraws to increase the damage that I'm doing with Surf. I hope that Omastar is going to have enough damage to 3-shot the Dugong. If I can't, it can endlessly use Rest and waste a ton of time. But it is less likely to use Rest here than it is on other Pokemon like Nidoking, for example. The reason is because the AI is choosing Bubble Beam as super effective against my Rock type, whereas Rest is not super effective against either of my types. So it's only going to be selecting Rest in the case that it's seeing Bubble Beam and Aurora Beam as neutral, which is a complex part of Lorelei's AI script. I'm not going to go into it in detail here. Because it takes so little damage from the special moves, I am able to get set up all the way to +6, and then Surf is able to 2-shot the Dugong. Cloyster's next, it misses Clamp. I miss Surf with a Gen 1 miss. Then I get trapped by Clamp because Bubble Beam dropped my speed twice, so I'm not moving first against the Cloyster. And as a result of that Gen 1 miss, I end up losing. In the next battle, things are going better for me. I'm able to knock out the Cloyster with half health remaining, and then I mimic Amnesia from Slowbro. Please observe exactly how much damage the Slowbro is dealing to Omastar before I set up with Amnesia. It's basically nothing. This is because I have badge boosted my special stat 6 times. Once I set up once with Amnesia, I actually have one less special than I had from the badge boosts. But after 2 Amnesia boosts, I have much more. And then I get to +6. I'm shrugging off Surfs easily now, unless the Slowbro gets its 6% chance to crit, which it does, and it knocks out Omastar. Gosh, Lorelei is really not going how I was hoping. If the Slowbro doesn't get a critical hit and I'm able to set up with Amnesia, then I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to sweep. After the badge boosts on my speed from Amnesia, I'm able to move first against the Jinx. I one-shot with Surf, then Lapras comes in, but Omastar levels up here, so I am slower. Lorelei's Ace misses a Hydro Pump, Omastar hits with Surf, and with 742 special, it is just barely not able to one-shot. Lorelei rolls for Hydro Pump again, but because of my outrageous special, I shrug it off and knock out her Ace. I should mention that Omastar and Kabutops are both technically weak to fighting type moves. The second Elite Four member is Agatha. This battle is quite annoying for Omastar. Look at the speed comparisons. We underspeed all 3 ghosts, and we are speed tied with Golbat. Not to mention the fact that the first Gengar has Mega Drain, so it can do 4 times damage as well as healing itself. It can also get really annoying by paralyzing using Lick, or setting up its defense with Substitute. I could take the time Mimic Substitute from the Gengar, set this up, and then have a defense against annoying status conditions for the remainder of the battle, but I wanted to play this fight slightly differently, instead just going for Withdraw, boosting my speed, and then having favorable matchups against her first 4 Pokemon. With only 2 badge boosts, I'm able to 2-shot the first Gengar, which is really great. Ice Beam one-shots the following Golbat, Haunter is taken care of in 2 turns, and I do enough damage to trigger Agatha's use of a Super Potion, so it never even has a chance to go for Hypnosis in this fight. Surf is able to one-shot the Arbok, I level up, and then move on to the final Gengar, which was gonna outspeed me no matter what I did. It whiffs a Hypnosis on turn 1. Luckily, this Gengar does not have Mega Drain. Surf, without badge boosts, is doing enough to 2-shot, which is outrageous. Actually, it just barely doesn't 2-shot. It looked like it was going to. Gengar survives on a sliver of health, but because it's low, Agatha uses a Super Potion, and my follow-up Surf knocks it out. Lance is next. This is kind of easy, honestly. As long as the Gyarados isn't hitting with a ton of Hydro Pumps. Well, it misses the first one, and I have to 3-shot with Ice Beam, so it's able to attack one more time. It's locked into Hydro Pump because it sees it as super effective against my Rock type. In this case, it gets a critical hit, taking me down to orange health before I move on. But from here, I should just win. I'm faster than the Dragonite, so it's never going to hit with Thunder, and while the Aerodactyl is going to move first, it only has physical moves, and Omastar doesn't care. Aerodactyl hits with Fly, I go to red health, but Surf one-shots, Dragonite comes in, and Ice Beam takes care of it. I've got 1 rare candy left over, so I can use it to go up to level 59 before taking on the champion. I want to come back now and reflect on my choice to skip rest in the SSN. I think there is a good argument for Omastar using it here against the champion to have a more consistent time. I could set up with Withdraw on the Sand Slash, take less damage from Earthquake every turn, which it is locked into, and then I could use Rest to heal. Provided Earthquake would be doing enough damage, I could continue setting up with Withdraw and outspeed the Alakazam, which is second. I didn't want to play this way, instead just one-hitting the Sand Slash with Surf and two-shotting the Alakazam that follows. There are risks here. Alakazam could confuse with Psybeam, it could drop my special with Psychic, or lower my accuracy with Kinesis. It's also very fast, so it has a 23% chance to critical hit. On turn 2, Alakazam goes for Psychic, dropping my special, so I'm not able to two-shot, and I just decided to reset. Second battle, the Alakazam gets a critical hit with its second Psychic, wasting both time as well as knocking Omastar out, giving me no chance to win. Fine. Okay, hopefully third time's the charm. I move on to Alakazam. This time it goes for Psybeam, followed by a miss from Kinesis, and I two-shot. Perfect. Exeggutor is next. This Pokemon is always going to spam Leech Seed because it sees it as super effective. And unlike non-volatile status conditions, the AI isn't checking to see if I have Leech Seed on me already. As a result, it just keeps using this move over and over again. And in Generation 1, it only drains 1/16 of my maximum health every turn, unlike later generations where it starts draining 1/8. Because of the minimal damage from this status condition and the fact that Exeggutor is never going to use a different attack, I can just set up Withdraw as many times as I want, provided I haven't taken too much damage from the prior Alakazam. So the miss from Kinesis was very helpful for Omastar in this scenario. I go all the way to +6, then I use Ice Beam, and with badge boosts, I one-shot Exeggutor. Magneton is next. This is the Pokemon I wanted badge boosts for to ensure that Surf would one-shot. Cloyster follows. I'm probably going to have to two-hit here, and Clamp is very scary as a result. It's a multi-turn move, so it's going to trigger Leech Seed every time it hits. But Cloyster misses, and I knock it out with 2 Surfs, finishing off the final Flareon with Surf, getting Omastar a time of 42 minutes and 43 seconds, with 6 resets at level 60, with a game time of 2 hours and 38 minutes. These are the metrics for Kabutops to beat. Lorelei starts off very annoying, dropping my speed with Bubble Beam. I then use Body Slam. Dugong does go for rest, so I'm able to complete my setup with Swords Dance and knock it out in a single hit. Cloyster's next. Body Slam is able to one-shot, but my speed is too low, so Jinx is going to be able to move first. I one-shot the Slowbro, but there's a risk here that she wins with an Ice Punch that gets a freeze, or potentially Lovely Kiss, but I don't think that the Jinx is going to knock out Kabutops. Its other moves, Double Slap and Thrash, are pretty bad against rock types. Luckily, Ice Punch does not freeze. I knock it out with Body Slam and move on to the Lapras. Kabutops leveled up before this, so I lose my speed boosts, but I'm still faster than Lorelei's Ace. Plus, with Swords Dance, Body Slam is able to one-shot. Kabutops pulls through on its first attempt against Lorelei. But what about the next member of the Elite Four? As I go into her chamber, I was starting to feel a little bit worried. Kabutops' lower special stat means it's more at risk from moves like Psychic, Dream Eater, or Mega Drain. Also, if you look at my current moveset, I just don't have good moves against ghosts. The only damage-dealing move that Kabutops currently is in possession of is Bubble Beam. One potential way to play this fight is mimicking Substitute, setting it up, badge boosting with Swords Dance, and then using Bubble Beam for damage. The problem with this strategy is just that it's really slow, and Substitute doesn't block every single status condition. The Haunter and Final Gengar are going to be able to put me to sleep with Hypnosis, and the Arbok can paralyze with Glare. Plus, the first Gengar can keep breaking my Substitute with Mega Drain if it chooses to use it. But like other trainers in Pokemon Yellow, Agatha doesn't have good AI, so she doesn't really know what she should be doing here. I think if she did have good AI, this fight could be much more difficult for both of these fossil Pokemon, especially their first stages, because the initial Gengar would spam Mega Drain over and over again. Right now, with random AI, I'm going to be able to luck through her no matter what. So in this case, she switched out to her Golbat, and then after mimicking Substitute, I just realized this strategy is not going to work. It's going to be slow, and I'm probably going to lose far into the battle and be very frustrated. So I reset, instead coming back and mimicking the Gengar's Lick. While I am exposed to things now like Lick's paralysis from Gengar or damage from Mega Drain as well as confusion, I can set up Swords Dance, increase my attack, and then hit with a physical move that is super effective. Unfortunately, I did get paralyzed and hit by Mega Drain, so by the time I move on with the battle, I'm not in a good position. I keep getting chipped away at by other Pokemon on her team, and I make it to the final Gengar, but then it confuses Kabutops, and because of Screech, there is a massive discrepancy between my attack and my defense. These are the stats that are used to calculate self-inflicted damage, so Kabutops knocks itself out. In the next battle, everything works out for me. As soon as I mimic Lick, she switches in her Golbat and then goes for Talk, Toxic. This is very good for Kabutops. In Generation 1, the Toxic counter only increments if you don't knock out the enemy's Pokemon. So as long as I have enough time to set up with Swords Dance and I can one-shot everything else, the status condition actually prevents her from using status conditions. I get to +6, Body Slam one-shots Golbat, Lick one-hits the first Gengar as well as the Haunter, Body Slam takes care of Arbok, and then Lick isn't able to knock out the Gengar because I get a critical hit, so I take some damage from Poison, but her ace just goes for Dream Eater when I'm not asleep. Because of that, I finish Agatha on the next turn. It's nice to move past her, but I lost a lot of time during this battle. Lance is the reason that I didn't want to teach Surf earlier on, because I want to put Blizzard in the place of Bubble Beam, keeping Body Slam, Swords Dance, and Mimic. I start the battle off with Swords Dance, hoping that I can tank one Hydro Pump from the Gyarados. And Kabutops can. It's going to be able to survive 2 of these hits, so if I want to use Swords Dance one more time, I can. I decided to go for it even though I was faster than the Aerodactyl already. Unfortunately, the next Hydro Pump crits and Kabutops faints. I get much better luck in the next fight. Hydro Pump misses once, and then the 2 attacks with it don't knock out Kabutops, so I'm able to get all the way to +6. Body Slam one-shots Gyarados, and then I can use this move instead of the inaccurate Blizzard to knock out both of the Dragonairs. I will use Blizzard against the Aerodactyl. It attacks with Swift, doing almost nothing, and then I knock it out. Dragonite is last. I leveled up before it, but I'm still way faster, and I go for Body Slam so that I have consistency. It knocks out Lance's ace in 1 hit. Before the champion, I use 1 rare candy, so Kabutops is going to finish this run 1 level higher than Omastar did. My strategy for the final battle is pretty simple. Swords Dance on turn 1 to set up, Sandslash hits with Earthquake, and it gets a critical hit one-shotting. Alright, not a great start. I've had some bad luck here during the league. Next time, maybe I'm not going to set up Swords Dance. Maybe instead I will mimic Earthquake from the Sandslash, tank 1 hit from Earthquake, which does more than half, and then use Blizzard to knock out the Sandslash on the next turn. With Earthquake, I have better physical damage for the Alakazam, and Kabutops naturally outspeeds it, with 159 speed compared to 156. Now that Executor comes in next, it's gonna spam Leech Seed, giving me time to set up to +6 with Swords Dance. Obviously, I have enough damage to knock out the Executor now, as well as the Magneton, but the real question is Cloyster, because getting hit by Clamp would be devastating. I go for Earthquake on Cloyster, and I pray. Luckily, it has enough damage. Cloyster goes down, Flareon gets obliterated by Earthquake, and I finish the game with a time of 43 minutes and 8 seconds, with 7 resets at level 61, with a game time of 2 hours and 42 minutes. These results are so close. Omastar was 24 seconds faster than Kabutops. It had 1 less reset, they had the same number of blackouts, 0. Omastar finished the game 1 level lower, and on this graph it says that the game time was 3 minutes lower. This is because it's calculating game time when I beat the champion, not when I'm in the Hall of Fame. If we compare the Hall of Fame times, then the game time is different by 4 minutes. Here are the timeline graphics of these playthroughs. They're actually really different from each other. You can see the fossils start the game off very similarly with an almost identical Brock split, but then at Misty, Omastar is able to take the lead, and from there, it doesn't give back much time until later in the game. It definitely struggled against Lorelei and had a longer league split as a result. It also had a worse time against the champion, so Kabutops gained back some time in the late game. But if we look at the real time by trainer graph, these two are so close to each other. Omastar is faster during the later stages of the early game and the early stages of the mid game. But by the time Lorelei happens, Kabutops took the lead just slightly. The thing that ruined its run is Agatha. If it had beat her on its first attempt, it would have finished the game faster than Omastar. I love it when a duo designed by Game Freak ends up being this close to each other. This is one of the reasons I love doing videos like this. It gives you a sense of how these Pokemon perform on their own against every single threat in the game, so that then when you're playing the game, you can be a little bit more informed as to which Pokemon you should be choosing. With these two, I don't think there's a big enough difference to make a call based on these results alone. We are going to have to do many more playthroughs in order to figure out which fossil is best in Generation 1. But you know what information I know without doing more playthroughs? The fact that Aerodactyl is the worst of the fossil Pokemon. By far. It is so much worse than both Kabutops and Omastar. But is it really as bad as my tier list suggests? Well, despite what I said before, I got too curious. So let's find out. As I get into this Aerodactyl playthrough, I want to mention the fact that there are currently 5 Aerodactyl videos on my channel. In the past, I've used it as a way to talk about my nostalgic experience with each game. My initial Aerodactyl video in Pokemon Yellow came out on May 23rd, 2021. Then the next year, on June 1st, 2022, I played Aerodactyl again in Pokemon Yellow and got its current tier list lowest ranking. After that, I explored the other games. In Halloween month of 2022, I played it in Crystal version. In May 2023, I played it in Emerald. And then in Halloween month of 2024, I played it in Pokemon Fire Red, which is the first time in the series that it gets access to Rock Slide. As a rock flying type in Generation 1, Aerodactyl is at its worst. For base stats, it has 80 HP, 105 attack, 65 defense, 130 speed, 60 special, and a 25.39% chance to crit, which is a double-edged sword. I'll talk about that more in a little bit. Unlike the other two fossils, it has a slow growth rate, which is absolutely brutal. And that's the reason that my current result with it in the tier list is so bad. When I used to do these solo challenges, I tried to come up with consistent strategies. Essentially, that boiled down to me trying to play the game in a way that would give me the minimum possible resets and blackouts. It feels really great to go through a full playthrough without any faults, but it really sacrifices real time. And Aerodactyl is a Pokemon that suffers from this phenomenon more than others, because if you're trying to be consistent against Lorelei, you're going to ruin your entire playthrough. Today, I am not going to try to over-prepare for Lorelei. Instead, I want to get a better result in my first playthrough right away, and then optimize from there. So the time to beat with Aerodactyl is 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 45 seconds. Aerodactyl starts the game with Wing Attack and Agility. Agility is going to be useful later, but Wing Attack is exceptional at the beginning of the game. It gets the same type attack bonus, and unfortunately in Generation 1 this move has 35 base power, so it only has an effective power of 52.5, but luckily it's super effective against all of the bugs in the forest. So I can make quick work of these 4 trainers, leveling up to 9 before heading into Pewter City. Then battling the junior trainer inside of Brock's gym, Aerodactyl levels up to 10. This is enough to defeat Brock. The rock typing here is the whole reason this is possible. Aerodactyl only takes 2 damage per hit from Geodude's tackle, leaving me with green health for the Onix. Aerodactyl's high speed is also an advantage here, because if Onix goes for Bide, I can just use Agility to buy time and then go back to Wing Attack once Onix has finished. Also, my high critical hit rate means that occasionally I'll do more damage to Onix, speeding up my progress. In this run, I'm able to beat Brock in 4 minutes and 12 seconds. The section of the game between Pewter City and Cerulean City is not great for training. Instead, I can fight the bug catcher on Route 3 for a little bit more experience, but inside Mount Moon, I'm not going to fight any additional trainers. Just taking on the mandatory Super Nerd, as well as Jesse and James, getting Aerodactyl to level 15 before I take on Rival 2. This fight's a bit problematic because I have a 63.8% chance to 3-shot the Sandshrew and a guaranteed 4-hit. I got hit by Sand Attack once, which did badge boost me, so I get a 3-shot, but having accuracy lowered is not great. I have to 2-shot the Rattata and 3-shot the final Eevee unless I score critical hits. There isn't really risk here since Aerodactyl resists all of his moves, but every time I get hit by Sand Attack, the fight just lasts longer and longer, wasting time. So while the rival won't beat Aerodactyl, it does have the potential to kill your run if you get very unlucky and miss over and over again. After Route 25, I go into Misty's gym and fight the junior trainer, leveling up to 20. I thought this damage rounding threshold might be good enough for the second gym leader. No, it's not. Look at how much damage a critical hit from Water Gun from Staryu does. That's half. Starmie comes in next, and Wing Attack is doing 1/4, then the Starmie crits with Water Gun as well, and Aerodactyl faints. I tried one more time, and no, this is not going to work unless I rely on Wing Attack critical hits to 2-shot the Starmie. Instead, I'm going to leave the gym and head south to the SS Anne. I fight the Gentleman here, but I skip Rest. I don't think it's needed for Aerodactyl. I just want every rare candy from the playthrough except the Power Plant one, because I'm using a slow growth rate Pokemon. As a rock type, the rival is once again very easy. With him defeated, I was halfway through level 22, so I decided to use 1 Ether and then fight an optional trainer on the SS Anne to level up to 23. With the next damage rounding threshold, I was hoping to have a 1-shot on Misty's Staryu, and I get it because of a critical hit. Then Wing Attack looks like it's going to 3-shot the Starmie, but it's still doing too much damage even with just Water Gun, so Aerodactyl loses again. In the end, what I have to rely on is critical hits. I get one on Starmie first turn, it goes for X defend, but even after the defensive boost, my follow-up 2 Wing Attacks are able to knock it out. Misty wasn't that bad. She's sort of like Lorelei light in playthroughs with rock-type Pokemon. Hopefully, I'll be able to make her a little bit easier in my follow-up runs. For now, let's continue. The Wrapping Lass is easy. I have Wing Attack. Now, one reason to pick up Rest might be to use it against the self-destructing hiker. He can't do very much damage with self-destruct since it's a normal move, but he does have Rock Throw, and if he uses this and chips away at Aerodactyl, then he can win. However, if his Pokemon all just go for self-destruct, then I'm going to win. And there's also a another path to victory. He can waste time with moves like Defense Curl and Tackle. I can crit and slowly knock his Pokemon out with Wing Attack. If I just get one or two of them, then the other one can self-destruct and Aerodactyl can win. I took one reset here, so he only ended up being a slight nuisance. In the Rocket Hideout, I pick up the TM for Double Edge. This will be very important in the next section of the game. After that, I grab the rare candy. Again, I'm going to want all 11, and then I head to Erika. I figured with Wing Attack, I would be able to defeat her grass types, but Tangela is draining a lot of my health, and I only have 1/3 left over by the time I move on to the Weepinbell. I knock it out with a critical hit, then move on to the Gloom. I can't one-shot, get hit by Petal Dance, and Aerodactyl faints. Okay, that's annoying. To make this fight easier, I'm going to teach Fly. Now, technically, it does the same amount of damage as Wing Attack does over the same number of turns, but the way they deal damage is fundamentally different. With Wing Attack, you get attacked once between the damage you're dealing, whereas with Fly, it deals it all at once, allowing you to one-shot without taking any hits. And because of this, I can take care of both of the Weepinbell and the Gloom, and Aerodactyl gets itself the 4th badge. Well, its 3rd badge, because I have to backtrack to Surge now. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to get hit by Thunderbolt at a lower level, and Wing Attack is really bad against his Raichu. After all, it's resisted. But now I have Double Edge, so I can knock out the Raichu in only 2 hits. The rival in Pokemon Tower ended up being a little bit better than I thought. The Furo went for Growl, lowering my attack, and then because of this, I take a ton of damage from Magnemite's Sonic Boom. Shelter is only going to spam Withdraw, so it just wastes time. Sandshrew hits me with a Sand Attack. By this point, I've won because I'm a Rock type, but again, the fight takes longer than I would have liked it to. The Chandler in Pokemon Tower are simple because Wing Attack can one-shot all of the Ghastly. On Cycling Road, I fight 6 optional trainers. The Grimy Biker, the Wheezing Biker, the 2 Q-Balls by the grass, the Q-Ball with fighting types, and the Biker Boss. It makes sense to fight Koga upon arriving in Fuchsia City, because he has a bunch of bug types and Fly is super effective. I one-shot all of the Venonats, move on to the Venomoth, and 2-shot. Its Psychic doesn't really do enough damage for me to be scared. It does drop special, so if I missed with Fly, I could have lost here, but if it doesn't get the special drop or a critical hit, I'm going to survive 2 shots. With Surf outside of battle, I head south of Cinnabar Island, take on Psych, and then I go to Silph. I only fought 2 optional trainers here, the guy to get the Machoke candy, and then the Protein Scientist. After that, I took on the Arbok trainer, which got me to level 38, and I was hoping that this would be good enough for the rival. It's not. I have to 3-shot the Sandslash with Fly, and finally, this Pokemon can do significant damage since Slash always gets critical hits. Cloyster follows that, and there is no way for me to one-shot. It just misses a bunch of clamps. However, then it chooses Aurora Beam, gets a critical hit, and Aerodactyl faints. I'm gonna come back here later. Now, I talked about how the fossils are really good against Blaine, and that is true when they have a double resistance to fire moves. But Aerodactyl, unlike Omastar and Kabutops, does not have that advantage. In this case, with a low special stat, we are taking tons of damage from his fire moves. And with our pitiful moves, Fly's pretty bad in this generation, Wing Attack's terrible, Double Edge does recoil, we are not faring well. I lose to Rapidash and don't even make it to his Arcanine. I tried again, this time not even making it to the Rapidash. In the 3rd attempt, Rapidash defeats Aerodactyl with Takedown of all moves. And after that loss, I decided to do more training. I fight everyone in the fighting dojo. This is a rare area for me to clear out in these runs. I felt like it was a good idea with Aerodactyl since Wing Attack is so spammable. After this, I went back to Silph, fought a bunch more trainers, and leveled up to 43 before returning to Blaine. Turns out this doesn't make him easier, he is still awful. While I am able to get to the Arcanine and bring it to low health, it defeats me with Fire Blast. Then I get burned on my next attempt. Just great. Losing physical damage is not acceptable in this case. I lose to Fire Blast again, Ninetales gets me, Rapidash gets me, Ninetales gets me again. Really, what this takes is just luck. I want him to use normal moves, and I want the Arcanine to either miss with Fire Blast or spam Reflect. When these events happen, or Aerodactyl gets critical hits, it is able to win, but I have 15 resets by this point. The run is not going well, but defeating Blaine gives a distinct advantage for the rival in Silph, who I have to face now. I can teach Flamethrower. Wait, did I just say Flamethrower? There is no Flamethrower TM in Generation 1. It's so frustrating. Never mind, I can teach Fire Blast in the place of Wing Attack, and I also have a special boost from the Volcano badge. This allows me to knock out the Sandslash and the Cloyster in less turns. By the way, Double Edge is pretty close to Fire Blast in terms of damage here. With it, I have a 52% chance to knock out the Sandslash in 2 turns, but Fire Blast has a 78.7% chance. It can also burn, so it has upside. Also, for both Sandslash and Cloyster, Fire Blast has a 21.6% chance to one-shot. That's in the case that it doesn't miss and it gets a critical hit. And it has the exact same chance to two-shot the Cloyster, whereas Double Edge has only a 44.3% chance. Using Fire Blast, I am also not losing HP every time I attack, which is great, because I occasionally get hit by Clamp, and this move still does a lot of damage even though I have a special boost. Luckily, it only hits 2 turns. Next is Magneton. Unfortunately, it's not a steel type, so I need to attack it twice with Double Edge, getting hit by Thundershock in the process. I am left with red health for the final 2 Pokemon. Kadabra is easily a one-shot with Fly, but I wasn't sure if Flareon was going to go down, and it doesn't, surviving. But Ember isn't able to do enough damage, and Aerodactyl pulls through. Still, this fight was really close. I would like to have a better solution here for the next run. Sabrina is really easy unless I miss with Fly. I shouldn't miss with Fly. I could use Double Edge. I don't want to on Abra or Kadabra to preserve health, but for Alakazam I think that Double Edge does make more sense since it can increase its defense with X-Defend or Reflect. Giving it time to do this with Fly makes very little sense. I still can't one-shot. It's a little bit annoying, but in the end, Sabrina's really simple. For Giovanni's gym, I stay on minimum battles, and then I go up against the final gym leader. He is kind of rough for Aerodactyl. While Dugtrio can't do any damage, it can use Sand Attack, which is annoying. I could set up Agility here, but I could also set up Agility against the Persian to badge boost. This is what I chose to do. Then I use Double Edge to try to knock out the remainder of his Pokemon, but this isn't gonna work. I'm taking a ton of damage from Nidoqueen's Thunder, and my health is left very low by the time I make it to Nidoking. Just using Double Edge faints Aerodactyl. Obviously, this approach didn't make a lot of sense. Instead, I'm gonna let go of Fire Blast. It's really good for the rival and not particularly useful after that. I can teach Mimic in its place, then steal Dugtrio's Earthquake, and now I have super effective damage for Nidoqueen, Nidoking, and Rhydon. I opted to skip Agility setup on the Persian, and this is a mistake. I can't one-shot Nidoqueen or Nidoking, so they did have a chance to damage me. In this case they didn't, and I got lucky making it to the Rhydon. However, its Rock Slide does way too much damage, and I have to 3-shot with Earthquake. I tried setting up with Agility, but I still can't one-shot the Nidoqueen, although I can on the Nidoking. And while Rhydon is taking more damage, it still does too much with Rock Slide, which by the way was a critical hit here. It's annoying when slow Pokemon get these. I tried one more time like this, and no, it's not gonna work. I lost to the Nidoqueen. Since I'm partway through level 46, I went back and fought additional trainers inside of Giovanni's gym. I had to go back and heal during this, as well as looping around inefficiently because I didn't fight the trainer that I wanted to fight, this guy over here who has Arbok and Tauros. I'll mention here that there's a potential alternative if you're playing this strategy at home, but I'm not going to be going for it today. That is, spamming Agility on the Arbok until it paralyzes you with Glare. Then I can use Fly, trigger the invulnerability glitch, where you get paralyzed when you're in the air. That would prevent Aerodactyl from taking damage from any of Giovanni's Pokemon. From there, I could just mimic Earthquake and sweep his team. But for many reasons, this strategy is extremely busted, and I'm not going to be using it. Instead, after leveling to 48, I'm going to use Rare Candies all the way up to 58. On the way at level 54, I can teach Hyper Beam, which I put in the place of Double Edge, and while it does have the downside of a recharge turn, this only triggers if I don't knock the enemy Pokemon out. Getting rid of the downside of recoil is nice, especially because I now have 50% more damage. At level 58, I mimic Earthquake, then use Hyper Beam, one-shotting Dugtrio. I should have set up Agility on the Persian just to be safe, but instead I went for Hyper Beam, knocking it out. Maybe at the higher level I have the damage ranges I need. Yes, I can one-shot the Nidoqueen, I can one-shot the Nidoking, and what about Rhydon? Well, I do more than half, and then Giovanni uses a guard spec. I really hope that they're paying him a ton of money, but because he has to resort to a life of crime, I don't think that they are. This is just a bad deal for him all around. The rival prior to the league is pretty easy for Aerodactyl. I can set up Agility on the Sandslash since it doesn't have any moves that can do significant damage. From there, Cloyster is dangerous. It gets a critical hit with Aurora Beam, bringing me down to orange health. But then I crit the Magneton with Hyper Beam, one-shotting it. And while I do miss on the Kadabra, Aura taking a ton of damage, and I also don't knock it out with Fly, the rival just uses a potion. So with 5 hit points, I move on to the Flareon. So does Hyper Beam pull through for me? The answer is yes. Flareon goes down, and Aerodactyl moves on to Victory Road. Here, I grab the last rare candy. I fight one trainer to level up to 60. Turns out this doesn't quite work. I have to take on a wild Golbat, knock it out to get level 60, and with that, I'm ready for the worst battle in the entire run. If Aerodactyl was in a horror flick, one of the bad movies that they just churn out every single year, some kind of slasher, Lorelei would be the masked villain chasing it with like a water gun and water balloons, because that's the thing that Aerodactyl truly fears. Also, maybe like a popsicle or something. This thing also doesn't like to be cold. Turn 1, I want to use Fly so that then I damage the Dugong and it goes to sleep with rest. This is where the crit rate is sometimes a double-edged sword for Aerodactyl, because if I crit the Dugong, then it just faints and I don't get to set up with agility. So instead, I'm just going to try and make it through all of her Pokemon without setting up. Maybe I'm going to get really lucky with critical hits. Without agility setup, Fly doesn't do enough damage to two-shot the Cloyster. I tried using a Hyper Beam as a follow-up for more damage, and no, I still don't knock it out, so I have to recharge. Because of this, I get hit by so many turns of Clamp. But Aerodactyl does knock out the Cloyster. It survives with 16 hit points and moves on to the Slowbro. Because of Lorelei's good AI, this Pokemon is only ever going to choose Surf or Withdraw. And because of AI modification 2 on the second turn in battle, it is always going to choose Withdraw. Aerodactyl's high crit rate here is a big advantage. If the Slowbro is spamming Withdraw, I can still deal significant damage with my moves and knock it out quickly. It goes down, I crit the Jinx, and I move on to the Lapras. Wait, are we gonna make it through this on our first attempt? This is when the protagonist of the horror movie makes bad choices the entire time and still somehow survives. I go for Hyper Beam on the Lapras, hoping for a crit, but no, it survives, uses Blizzard, and Aerodactyl rightfully faints. Now, sometimes the Dugong refuses to use Rest. Remember, it's less likely for Aerodactyl because of its typing. I get hit by Bubble Beam, having my speed dropped. I'm still faster than all of her Pokemon, so I tried to continue the fight. Unfortunately, then I get frozen by Cloyster's Ice Beam. Alright, a fast reset. I guess that's better than the previous one. I'm going to cut right to the Slowbro in the next fight. Notice that I have +6, so I got lucky in the early stages of the fight and I was able to set up that much. I thought I was about to knock it out, but then Fly misses and Surf hits. Aerodactyl faints. Yeah, okay, this fight is as bad as I remember it being. I'm able to make it by the Slowbro, but this time with only +4. Still, I was feeling pretty optimistic. I'm able to one-shot the Jinx, move on to the Lapras. My Fly does half, it goes for Blizzard, and Aerodactyl survives with 2 hit points. Perfect. Oh, it froze. Are you kidding me? So, back to the grind, losing to Lorelei over and over again. I arrive at the Lapras with my health too low, so I can't survive a Blizzard this time. Still, it makes sense to play out fights like this, since the Lapras can miss with either Blizzard or Hydro Pump, giving me the win. In the end, I think I need a different strategy. I'm gonna mimic Amnesia from the Slowbro, set it up so her Pokemon do less and less damage, and then sweep through the final 3 Pokemon on her team. This also badge boosts Aerodactyl more, so it's doing additional damage with Fly. I still didn't want to risk using Hyper Beam on the Lapras. I end up getting a critical hit, which I think lowers my damage, but now Lapras can't knock me out with a Blizzard. Aerodactyl survives on 22 hit points and finishes Lapras, getting a Lorelei split of 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 45 seconds. It's not good, I have 26 resets at this point, but I am at least on track to beat my previous Aerodactyl time. For this guy, just mimic Dig, then you have super effective damage against the rock types, and Fly for all the fighting types. Fly is great against Agatha. I actually got paralyzed here by Lick. I mimicked Substitute and set it up. I still win. This is a good example of using agility to counter out the debuff from paralysis. The only reason I'm worried about the status condition is it preventing me from attacking. But if it does and I'm using Fly, then it will trigger the invulnerability glitch. I'm not going to play for this intentionally, but if it happens, I'll let it happen. I'm not strictly going to ban it, but I don't want to use it intentionally. I heard all your feedback. I know that you don't like it when I use it. Okay, Lance. He feels very similar to Lorelei and Misty, but I think of the 3, he's actually the easiest for Aerodactyl. He only has 1 water-type Pokemon, and eventually it's just gonna miss Hydro Pump, giving me a pass. For me, this happens after only a single reset. Then I knock out his first Dragonair with Hyper Beam and mimic Ice Beam from his second. Hyper Beam can finish it off, but I get unlucky here, missing, tanking Bubble Beams in the process, going down to 6 hit points. Now, this is unfortunate, because then against Aerodactyl, I am unable to one-shot with Ice Beam, Beam, and it hits with Wing Attack, critting, knocking out my Aerodactyl. Okay, fine, back to the Gyarados. If it hits with Hydro Pump, I reset quickly. If it doesn't, then I play out the rest of the fight, mimicking Ice Beam. This time though I get a speed drop from Bubble Beam, so I squeeze in 1 agility, boosting my speed again. This also badge boosts me twice before the Aerodactyl, increasing my damage with Ice Beam. But it's still not enough to one-shot. This time it doesn't matter though, because my health is high. I finish the Aerodactyl and one-shot the Dragonite. Time for the champion. One of the reasons that Lorelei is so frustrating for Aerodactyl is because the champion is quite simple. I resist Sandslash's moves, it can't hit me with Earthquake, I can mimic Earthquake, and I can set up agility here for free. With full setup, I have to two-shot the Sandslash, but I can one-shot the Alakazam. Fly takes care of the Executor in one turn, Earthquake destroys the Magneton so I don't have to worry about it, but my health is getting low because I was poisoned. Also, I have to two-shot the Cloyster. It goes for Ice Beam, but Aerodactyl survives on 32 hit points. I finish it with Hyper Beam, move on to the Flareon, and Earthquake gets the job done. In my first playthrough back with Aerodactyl, I finished the game with a time of 1 hour 10 minutes and 14 seconds, with 30 resets at level 63, with a game time of 3 hours and 45 minutes. So here's your proof, Aerodactyl is by far the worst of these 3 Pokemon. Interestingly, it finished the game around the same level. Omastar was 60, Kabutops was 61, Aerodactyl was 63. However, its game time is significantly higher. If we look at the game time by trainer graph, we can see this playing out. Note that I'm fighting a bunch of trainers in different orders between these playthroughs, which is why the slopes of these graphs sometimes go down. As you can see here, from the very beginning of the game, Aerodactyl just never has a game time lead over the other Pokemon. The only reason it seems that way is because of the unordered splits. And by the very end of the playthrough, the discrepancy in game time has significantly widened. This is the slow growth rate for you, as well as being walled by Blaine and Lorelei. For Kabutops and Omastar, the question is, can they get into the S tier with a time under 40 minutes? For Aerodactyl, the question is it going to be even possible to get a sub-hour result? I got help from Zealous Pawn with the optimization of these 3 Pokemon. Thank you so much to him. He is truly one of the best Pokemon Yellow solo runners out there right now, and I am incredibly grateful that he is helping me with these runs. Okay, we're going to go pretty quickly through this Aerodactyl optimization because I think it comes down to only a few simple details. The early game is all the same as it was before, but we're going to change something for Misty. Instead of fighting more optional trainers in the SSN, I'm just going to do what's required of me, getting back to Misty at level 22. Unfortunately, damage ranges here with Wing Attack are not good. 2-shot on Staryu, 46.5% chance to 3-shot the Starmie, and Bubble Beam does between 59 and 71% damage. The solution here, like with so many other Pokemon, is to use Bide. Aerodactyl needs to accumulate damage from a single Water Gun from Starmie, so even if Misty goes for X-Defend on turn 2, I'm still gonna knock out her ace. I just need to get a 2-turn Bide or survive hits from 2 Water Guns. A 3-turn Bide is gonna mean a loss. If she gets a critical hit, I'm gonna lose, and if she uses Bubble Beam, I'm probably gonna lose too. One of the reasons I really like this strategy with Aerodactyl is it's just so fast. If you lose, it's in the blink of an eye, and if you win, it's also in the blink of an eye. I took 3 resets here to Misty, but still, I am 44 seconds ahead of my previous playthrough. Hopefully you can see just how much potential this strategy has if you're willing to restart over and over for a good Misty. For me, this was good enough. I'm just gonna go on a small side tangent here while Churro is making tons of noise at the door. Oh, he got quiet as soon as I mentioned him. Perfect. Anyways, in the Rock Tunnel, I got so close to losing to this Slowpoke. I had 1 hit point left over. Confusion can cause problems for Aerodactyl. I did also lose to the self-destructing hiker once. This fight is just luck. There is the possibility of using Bide here for massive upside. If you use Bide to accumulate damage from self-destruct, then you will knock out 2 of his Pokemon with only 1 move. This is very fast and very efficient, but he can also just use self-destruct with all of his Pokemon and then lose. I don't think getting rest for this fight is worth it since you lose very little time resetting to him, and with the current strategy, I can just win on my first attempt. In the department store, 2 protein to improve Aerodactyl's attack. Erika with Fly, Surge with Double Edge, and now I am 2 minutes and 35 seconds ahead of my former time. The mid-game really comes down to which trainers to fight and in what order to do them. The possible experience to earn inside of Silph is very good, so I go there first. I fight a total of 10 trainers here, and frustratingly, I did have to take 1 blackout. This can happen if you get confused or poisoned during the random rocket fights. It's just because Aerodactyl isn't outputting enough damage with either Fly or Double Edge to one-shot everything. Speaking of good damage ranges against trainers Pokemon, going to Cycling Road doesn't make a lot of sense first, since the Weezing there are quite resilient to physical damage. Instead, fighting people in Silph gives me a higher level by the time I go to Cycling Road, where I fight a total of 4 trainers. Inside Koga's gym, I fight one optional tamer, the guy closer to the door who has 3 Pokemon. This way I can fight Koga at level 40. This leaves Aerodactyl with a small amount of experience before level 41, so I fight this swimmer who has a Seadra and a Tentacruel on my way to Cinnabar Island. Then I use a total of 10 rare candies to get to level 51 before taking on Blaine. Now using Double Edge, I have guaranteed 2 hits on his first 2 Pokemon, and with Fly I have a 92.2% chance, just because of Fly's imperfect accuracy. For Arcanine I have a roughly 40% chance to 2-shot or a 3-shot, which is pretty good considering everything, and at the higher level Aerodactyl is more resilient to his attacking moves. While I was a little bit frustrated that I did get a blackout during Silph, I crush Blaine with Aerodactyl, having no resets here, and that puts me 10 minutes and 25 seconds ahead of my previous pace, which is just barely enough to get a sub-hour champion, provided the rest of the game plays out the same way that it did last time. Once again I'm using Fire Blast for the rival, but this time having used rare candies, I am a higher level before this fight. This doesn't impact Aerodactyl's offensive damage ranges against the first 2 Pokemon, but it does really help defensively, and despite getting hit by Sand Attack, I do win on my first attempt, but I dropped 4 seconds of my time advantage. In Sabrina's gym, I fight the Psychic that has 4 Pokemon for a little bit more experience. This adds time for me where it wasn't in the previous playthrough, so once I beat Sabrina, it looks like things are going very badly for Aerodactyl. Its lead has dropped to 9 minutes and 57 seconds, which is not enough to put it under the hour. I'm also going into the late game at a lower level than I was last time, but I have a plan, it's going to be okay. Inside Giovanni's gym, I have saved Fire Blast for this guy with Rhyhorn. Then, against the Black Belt with 3 fighting types, I level up to 54 and teach Hyper Beam in the place of Fire Blast. For Giovanni, I have put Mimic in the place of Double Edge, and I can steal Earthquake from the Doug Trio. I then set up Agility on the Persian, I go all the way to +6, and after that I use Hyper Beam to knock it out. Earthquake can then knock out the Nidoqueen, the Nidoking, and 2-shot the Rhydon. At level 54, Aerodactyl is not going to level up during this fight, losing its badge boosts, so I've improved its defensive stats, meaning that Rock Slide will do less damage, only 49 to 58%, unless it gets a critical hit, or if Aerodactyl has its defense lowered by Screech, which I do in this case, so Rock Slide gets the KO. Normally it's supposed to look like this, the Rhydon does good damage but not enough, and then I 2-shot. Okay, time to go to the power plant with Aerodactyl and pick up 1 more rare candy. It's always terrible when you have to do this, it takes so long, but I think for Aerodactyl it is worth it. I'm also going to use PP-ups on Hyper Beam just to ensure that I can use this move a few extra times in the case it misses. For Rival 6, I only need a single agility. With it, I'm going to 2-shot the Sandslash, I am likely to 2-shot the Cloyster, and I have 1 hits on all 3 of his final Pokemon. I did go all the way to +6 here, but it's not strictly required. As I head into Victory Road, I want to talk about one of the discussions that Zealouspawn and I had behind the scenes. It was kind of more of a friendly argument, sparring with ideas. Zealouspawn was advocating for Aerodactyl beating the champion at level 62 with a strategy that involved mimicking Hypnosis. This strategy is playing around the fact that we need a solution for the champion's Cloyster. Exeggutor is just going to be spamming Leech Seed over and over again, so we can take our time grabbing Hypnosis, setting up with 3 agilities, and then one-shotting with Hyper Beam on Magneton, Hypnosis on Cloyster, knock it out slowly, and then for Flareon we have Hyper Beam. This strategy synergizes around the fact that Aerodactyl is very competent against the Sandslash and the Alakazam. It takes very little damage from the former Pokemon and can one-shot the latter. So it seems like the perfect solution to grab Hypnosis as a solution to the only Pokemon on the champion's team that's going to be a 3-hit if we use Fly. But the Cloyster after 3 turns of Agility is a 2-hit with Hyper Beam. I want to wait to talk about the disadvantages of this strategy until we talk about its alternative. So in the background, we have seen me play a successful attempt against the champion using Hypnosis. The alternative to this is mimicking Earthquake from the Sandslash. This also synergizes well on the fact that we take little damage from the Sandslash and do a lot to the Alakazam. And while Earthquake is good against Magneton and Flareon, it's not particularly amazing against the Cloyster even after 3 turns of Agility. It only does between 38 and 45% damage. Plus, in order for this strategy to work effectively, I need to be level 63 63 from the beginning of the fight, because I want to set up my agilities against the Sand Slash. If it uses Slash and crits too many times, I'm going to reset because I need decent health for later in the fight. And right now, when analyzing things this way, it seems like the Earthquake strategy is just inferior. If I have to take 3 turns to knock out the Cloyster with Earthquake, then why wouldn't I mimic Hypnosis, put it to sleep, and knock it out with Hyper Beam? It's still going to take 3 turns to knock out the Cloyster because of 1 recharge, but with Hypnosis, I won't be taking damage. And now I am ready to talk about the disadvantages of the Hypnosis strategy. The problem with this is that the Executor is going to set up with Leech Seed. If it hits with Leech Seed, then every turn I am using a multi-turn move, I am losing a small amount of health. I also bleed health on 3 turns against Executor because I'm setting up with Agility, and then 1 additional turn with Fly. If I then use Hyper Beam on the Cloyster, I'm gonna bleed even more health. And if I miss with Hypnosis, everything falls apart. In my testing with Hypnosis, I went 3 and 8 using it against the champion. I didn't lose at all against Sandslash or Alakazam. I did lose against Executor once. I lost to Magneton once because Hyper Beam can miss, and I lost against Cloyster 6 times. By the way, I did 11 attempts just because the loss to Executor felt like way too bad luck. I didn't want to factor that into my decision about this strategy overall. So 3 to 7 against the champion is not great, but it is possible. Then I tried the Earthquake strategy, and I lost to the Sandslash 3 times, resetting every time it used Slash 2 times because I knew I wouldn't have enough health to survive a hit from the Cloyster. But I only ended up losing to the Cloyster a single time. This is because the damage from Fly plus the damage from Hyper Beam allows me to 2-shot it, provided I don't get bad damage rolls with both hits. And so with this strategy, I went 6 and 4 against the champion, and 3 of those losses are at the beginning of the battle. So when using Earthquake, I both have a better chance to beat the champion, and I also have faster resets. But there's even a better strategy here, which we figured out by toying with these ideas endlessly in Discord. Against the Sandslash, we want to use Agility first, which is the best play anyway for badge boosts. Then if it uses too many slashes, we don't have to reset, we can just KO the Sandslash and steal Hypnosis. This allows us to at least play out the fight and try to beat the Cloyster. There is still one more contextual play. If we are forced into the Hypnosis strategy and Executor misses Leech Seed on its first turn, then we simply put it to sleep with Hypnosis and try to avoid Leech Seed for the rest of the fight. If this works out, then we will have more success. When testing this strategy, Zealous went 7 to 3 against the champion. Getting back to my final Aerodactyl playthrough, in Victory Road, I needed to root in 1 more trainer in order to be level 63 by the start of the champion fight. Zealous Pawn's route got us to level 62, leveling up before the Executor, but that doesn't work because then we lose our badge boosts from the Sandslash. To get level 63, we have to fight the Starter Cool Trainer, the Juggler, the Chansey Cool Trainer, Victoria Bell, and the Black Belt. He is the additional trainer that I added for Aerodactyl to be a high enough level on the champion. There's a little bit of a quirk here in how I have to fight him. Before I take him on, I use 2 rare candies, and then I fight the Black Belt so that I have the additional experience after the candies. Then I can fight Lorelei at level 60. The Mimic Amnesia strategy ends up being superior here. Dugong needs to use Rest, then I have to set up Agility twice, and Hyper Beam has a 74.5% chance to one-shot the Dugong following that. Fly has a 63% chance to 2-shot the Cloyster, and then on Slowbro things get simple. Mimic Amnesia, hope it doesn't go for Surf, and then sweep the remainder of her team. After 2 Agilities and 3 Amnesias, Hyper Beam has an 81.8% chance to one-shot the Slowbro, but remember it's probably going to set up a bunch of withdraws, so Fly into Hyper Beam is the better strategy. Jinx is one-shot by either of my moves, and then I have an 85.9% chance to one-shot the Lapras. In this playthrough, I defeated her with only a single reset, and that felt very good. This puts Aerodactyl ahead of its former time by 14 minutes and 10 seconds. We are on track for a sub-hour time. Lance is annoying though because of his Gyarados, but I crit it right away with Hyper Beam. Then I mimic Ice Beam on the Dragonair, use Hyper Beam to knock it out. I set up Agility on the Aerodactyl. By the way, this is very important because at level 62, I have a 25.4% chance to one-shot the Dragonite with Ice Beam. Aerodactyl can't do much damage because all of its moves are physical and resisted by my rock typing, and after 3 turns of Agility, I have a guaranteed 1 hit on Aerodactyl as well as Dragonite. This run is going very well, but what about the champion? I played out 1 fight with slightly low HP. I can still win here if the Cloyster goes for Aurora Beam, but I think that Ice Beam and Clamp will knock out Aerodactyl. In cases like this, it sometimes is just better to reset right away. I tried playing it out. The Cloyster did go for Aurora Beam, but unfortunately it got a critical hit. Second time around though, my health is significantly higher. Earthquake does almost half, I tank an Ice Beam, and then I knock out the Cloyster with Hyper Beam. Flareon goes down, and and I get a time with Aerodactyl of 55 minutes and 29 seconds, with 7 resets, 1 blackout at level 64, with a game time of 3 hours and 27 minutes. This is 14 minutes and 45 seconds ahead of my first run. Aerodactyl fans rejoice because it has been redeemed, it has a sub-hour time. But still, after all of that, its best time is still worse than the times that Kabutops and Omastar were getting in their first runs. Let's go and see just how much better they can do with some optimization. A long time ago when Kabutops won, I switched what I was choosing here, saying that I would never go back to choosing the Helix fossil. And I'm honestly hoping that Kabutops is going to pull off another win in this video. I really love its design, and they just don't make Pokemon like this anymore. I'm recording this video on the day after Legends ZA just came out, and I looked at all the Mega Evolution designs. Why are they all so silly? Can't we just get one Pokemon that has scythes for arms? Anyways, Kabutops is great, we all know that. Let's continue. The early game for Kabutops is unchanged from my previous playthrough, including the fact that I'm going to be running Seismic Toss for Misty. Let's talk quickly about these damage ranges. Staryu does between 12 and 16% damage with Water Gun, and then Bubble Beam from Starmie does between 33 and 39% damage. If Staryu rolls its maximum damage with Water Gun, doing 16%, and then Bubble Beam gets its maximum roll of 39 on 2 turns, that accounts for 94% of Kabutops' HP. The issue here is the underspeed on Starmie. If I went for Bide to try to eliminate an optional trainer on Route 25, then I would have to tank 1 turn of free damage from the Starmie. Instead, using Seismic Toss, I just need 3 turns to knock it out. I have to get a little bit lucky here. It's ideal if the Starmie is not getting critical hits or using Water Gun all the time. It's also great if Misty uses an X defend. I got lucky in this playthrough defeating her on my first attempt, and I felt very good about the run. However, then Surge made things really awful. He used Thunderbolt a bunch on Kabutops. As soon as you see that he goes for this move, just reset because Kabutops can never survive. Thunderbolt's minimum damage roll is 111% when Kabutops is at level 24. I had 2 resets today, whatever. Eventually I beat the Raichu, and I'm still ahead of my former pace by 25 seconds. With Surge defeated, I grabbed the Squirtle in Vermilion City, but I am going to talk about this choice later. In Celadon City, I can skip the hideout entirely, saving some time, and in the department store, I purchased myself 2 Carbos to improve Kabutops' speed. Then we're off to Silph to fight 2 optional trainers, the Machoke Candy to get access to, well, the rare candy, as well as this Mr. Mime juggler who I have recently started fighting more and more because Zealous Pawn likes to route him in. He's a little bit risky, as you can see here. Luckily, I don't have a reset, even though Mr. Mime was able to confuse. The experience from these 2 battles levels Kabutops up to 32, and then I can use 4 rare candies to boost it to level 36 before taking on the rival. The reason for 36 here, which isn't a damage rounding threshold, is so that I level up after the Magneton outspeeding the Kadabra. A lot went wrong in this fight. I got hit by accuracy drops on the Sandslash, and I think I should have reset when it got to -2. However, I was stubborn and I tried to play things out. Body Slam ran out of PP, forcing me to use Bubble Beam against the Kadabra, and it gets a critical hit anyway. If the Sandslash doesn't completely ruin things for you in this battle, then you just set up with Swords Dance and crush the rest of his team. Seriously, I should have reset when I got hit by Sand Attack. Erika's next. For her, I fight only the Beauty. I don't need extra experience with Kabutops. This is one of the major advantages of running Swords Dance. It makes up for being under-leveled. At level 39 with 1 turn of Swords Dance, I have a 76.1% chance to one-shot the Tangela with Body Slam and guarantees on her final 2 Pokemon. Now, the Tangela gets a critical hit with Mega Drain, which can do between 89 and 105% damage. I was lucky here because Kabutops survives with 3 hit points and one-shots her lead. From there, unless I get a Generation 1 miss, I'm going to win. And I'm not going to try to build tension. I don't get a Generation 1 miss. I beat Erika. On Cycling Road, I am not going to fight any trainers. It's really weird to just bike through here and skip everyone. Then, inside Koga's gym, I need to buy time against this Drowsy so that it uses Poison Gas. This way, Koga won't be able to put Kabutops to sleep, giving me free setup with Swords Dance and a really easy sweep against his Pokemon. +4 is all that's needed in this fight. +6 doesn't actually help at all with damage ranges because critical hit rate is eating into Kabutops' chance to one-shot these Pokemon. With either +4 or +6, it's a 94.4% chance on the first Venonat, an 87.2% on the second one, an 84.4% on the third, and an 84.4% on the Venomoth. In the Safari Zone, I teach Kabutops Surf. This is why Squirtle is the wrong choice for these fossils. They're both going to be using this HM move, so there's no reason to have an additional HM user since Charmander can learn Strength. No trainers on Route 21 on my way to Cinnabar Island. 3 rare candies from level 42 up to level 45. Crush Blaine because he's easy for these fossils. Rip Aerodactyl. Sabrina's a little annoying. I wanted one Swords Dance here to outspeed the Alakazam. I get hit by a massive Psychic, but it's still not enough. I crush her team and move on to Giovanni, who completely destroys Kabutops with a turn 1 Fissure. At least resetting in this circumstance is very fast. For the next battle against Giovanni, I made what I consider to be a critical mistake. I only set up against the Persian to +4, but this doesn't give me the damage ranges I need for both of the Nidos. At this level of setup, I have a 24.3% chance against Queen and a 54.6% chance against King. But if I went to +6, I would have an 80.5% chance on Nidoqueen and a guarantee on Nidoking. Please do remember though, Giovanni is terrible. He just misses a Thunder with Nidoqueen, I knock it out for free, Nidoking comes in, and it follows suit, missing another Thunder. I beat him even though I made a critical mistake. Against Rival 6, the only annoyance here is Kabutops' critical hit rate. It prevents me from going above 84.4% chance to knock out on a bunch of his Pokemon. Specifically, Cloyster and Magneton are the two that I'm really worried about, but my chances here are more than good enough. I don't need to be playing a higher level strategy. Inside Victory Road, fight no optional trainers. This is the beauty of Swords Dance. I love this move. It is so satisfying to use in Generation 1. Now I have Mimic on Kabutops' set for Lorelei, but it's not needed to defeat her. I can just set up with Swords Dance and sweep with Body Slam. The only downside here is if the Lapras at the end of the battle gets a critical hit after Kabutops crits it and fails to one-shot, which is exactly what happens here. I even paralyzed Lapras, but it still moved. Hydro Pump obliterates Kabutops and I take 1 reset. In the next fight, Kabutops rightfully crushes her team. For Agatha, mimicking Lick is the best play. Setting up Swords Dance here does help. I get better damage ranges with each use of the move, so +6 is ideal to one-shot the ghosts. To take on Lance, Blizzard in the place of Mimic. Set up with Swords Dance twice on the Gyarados, knock it out using Body Slam, continue using the normal move for the first Dragonair as well as the second, and then Surf for Aerodactyl and Blizzard exclusively for the Dragonite. At +4 with Swords Dance, Body Slam is not going to one-shot the Dragonite, and its Thunder does between 55 and 65% damage. I don't want to get hit by that and then paralyzed and have Dragonite hit 2 turns in a row. Okay, final battle in this playthrough. The champion comes down to 2 things for Kabutops. Number 1, Alakazam has an outspeed because we haven't leveled enough, and even if I spent more time getting Carbos, like purchasing them from a second department store trip, I would still not be faster. I'm gonna survive a hit from Alakazam. It can also just go for turn 1 Recover, maybe miss a Kinesis, it could go for Psybeam doing very little damage, or it could critical hit with Psychic and one-shot Kabutops. This is not the scenario I need, but when Alakazam uses Kinesis, I can even just play this out because the rest of the champion's team is pretty bad. I set up Swords Dance, and provided I hit against the Magneton on turn 1 and prevent Thunder Wave, I should still be able to win. The second part of the fight that is difficult is the Cloyster. It's going to hit with Clamp and do decent damage, plus I can't one-shot with Body Slam. What I'm really grateful for here is that Kabutops has the Water type. If it was say a Rock Ground type, it would get obliterated by this Cloyster and have to rethink this battle, probably ending up mimicking Hypnosis from the Executor. But because of neutral damage, I can survive the hits from Clamp on 8 hit points, knock out Cloyster, one-shot Flareon, and finish the game with a time of 40 minutes and 11 seconds, at level 58 with a game time of 2 hours and 31 minutes. This result is better than my first run, but not by much, only 1 minute and 58 seconds. This was my 4th playthrough with Kabutops, and it was close enough to the 40-minute mark, which was what I was shooting for, so this is the time I'm going to take for it. Alright, let's get back to Omastar and see how Lord Helix does here. For this run, I'm going to update my rare candy usage prior to Misty. I don't need level 23, I can get by on level 22 with only 1 rare candy used at this section of the game. Here are the damage ranges against her Pokemon at level 21. I have a 43.9% chance to 2-shot the Staryu using Horn Attack and Omastar under speeds. But at level 22, I have a speed tie and an 80.7% chance to 2-shot. If I went to 23, I would get the outspeed, and I would also have a 2-shot on the Staryu, but I want to save my rare candies for later in the run. Of course, I solved the Starmie with Bide. This can go badly for Omastar. In this case, it does. Starmie gets a critical hit on turn 1, then it uses Water Gun, followed by another Bubble Beam, which gets a critical hit for a second time. But Omastar survives on 1 hit point, unleashes energy, and Starmie faints. Just look at how close these splits are to my previous run. I'm only 9 seconds ahead. This is what happens when a Pokemon is a rock type, has a water move, and outrageous special in the early game. It just steamrolls everything on minimum battles, and is essentially on rails until it gets to Surge. Maybe Omastar could lose here. It does underspeed, and Thunderbolt does a lot of damage, but it's not the guaranteed one hit that it is against Kabutops. Surge's maximum damage roll with it is 78%, so he needs 2 Thunderbolts in order to knock Omastar out. And because of that, I defeat him with no resets. He goes for Growl, and then Omastar gets a critical hit, 2-shotting the Raichu. It should have taken 3 turns. Now I'm 17 seconds ahead of my former time. Unlike Kabutops, the Rock Tunnel Gauntlet is a little bit worse for Omastar, primarily because of the Wrapping Lass. I have to 2-shot both of her Oddish. There isn't a way around this, so I'll just reset if I get Stun Spored on turn 1 and play out the fight in a slow way if I get Stun Spored by the second Oddish. Luckily, I crit the second one in this playthrough, so I don't have to deal with her annoying tactics. I also crit the Status Condition Junior Trainer's Oddish for a 1-shot. This should have been a 2-hit, and because of that, I was feeling very good about this run. In Celadon City, skip the Rocket Hideout. In the department store, buy 2 Carbos. This is the same plan for both of these fossils. But here Omastar diverges from Kabutops. Without access to Swords Dance to make up for levels, I have to fight some optional trainers. The Wheezing Biker, the Biker Boss, Machoke Candy, and then the mandatory Arbok Grunt in Silph. This brings Omastar to level 34. By the way, the keen-eyed among you will notice I have a lot of experience into level 34. It's because I ran into an accidental trainer on Cycling Road. I hit a wild encounter, and then my brake on my bike didn't work, and I went straight down after running away from the wild battle and bumped into him. Pretty frustrating. Oh well, I'm still going to use 5 rare candies from level 34 up to level 39. My experience needs to be planned out perfectly, so using rare candies can fix any problems that I have earlier in the run, like fighting optional trainers. For Rival 5, I was initially trying to set up on the Cloyster to avoid Sand Attack from the Sandslash. This turns out not to be the right strategy, and I had a bunch of resets in previous playthroughs because of that. Setting up on Sandslash is safest, but you can still get hit by Sand Attack. I do here, and so Omastar succumbs to the same fate that Kabutops did. If the Sandslash doesn't Sand Attack, then I get 2 turns of Withdraw in, ensuring that I 1-shot the Kadabra when using Body Slam. Surf 2-shots Cloyster, as well as Magneton. Luckily, it doesn't have Thunder Wave during this fight. I tank a Psybeam, 1-shot the Kadabra. You can see here why I don't want to be 2-shotting with Body Slam. It does decent damage with its psychic moves. Flareon is last, and of course, Surf is enough here. In Erika's gym, fight the Cool Trainer for a little bit more experience. Again, another slightly slower part to the route with Omastar when compared with Kabutops. By this time, Omastar is level 42, and it can 1-shot all of Erika's Pokemon with Ice Beam. From the Grass-type specialist to Koga, I stayed on minimum battles. Level 43 is more than enough for Omastar. Guarantees on the first 2 Venonats, a 74.8% chance on the third one, and then a 3-shot on the Venomoth, but Psychic only does between 20 and 24% damage. Blaine is bad. Sabrina is better, I guess. 1 turn of Withdraw boosts my speed, and in this case, I just chose to play the risky strategy, which is setting up on the Abra, tanking a Flash, then I can knock it out, set up more on the Kadabra if I want to outspeed everything else, or I can just go with the underspeed on Alakazam, which is what I did here. I Paralyze and 2-shot. For Giovanni, I only need 1 turn of Withdraw, which I'm going to set up on the Persian. This ensures that I outspeed the Nidoking, and I have 1-shots on all of his remaining Pokemon using Surf. Well, the exception to this is the Persian, which I should have 2-shot, but I got a critical hit. Once I defeat Giovanni, I use 2 rare candies going from level 48 to 50. For Rival 6, there is advantage for Omastar setting up all the way to +6 with Withdraw. These badge boosts give me a 55% chance to 1-shot the Cloyster and 1 hits on everything else. In Victory Road, I fight 1 trainer for experience rooting, this guy with the starters, that levels Omastar up to 52 exactly, and then I use 1 rare candy, boosting it to level 53 before taking on Lorelei. I find it interesting that both Omastar and Kabutops are running essentially the same set at this point in the game. Surf, a setup move, Withdraw or Swords Dance, Mimic, and Body Slam. Now, I want you to pay close attention to this Lorelei fight. Dugong does go to sleep, and I set up with Withdraw twice. This way, I have an 88% chance of knocking out the Cloyster in 2 hits with Surf, and I can 3-shot the Dugong when using Surf. This prevents me from spending extra time here getting hit by Bubble Beam over and over again. And hopefully, it's going to mean that the Cloyster does less damage with Clamp. However, it rolls the move right away, gets a critical hit, and in Generation 1, all multi-turn moves deal the same amount of damage on all subsequent turns. So it's like it's critting with every single hit, and it brings Omastar down to 20 hit points. I knock it out, but I wasn't liking my chances here. Slowbro has to spam Withdraw over and over again until I Mimic Amnesia and set it up. 1 Withdraw, 2 withdraws, 3 withdraws. I get set up fully with Amnesia, and then I use Surf and one-shot the Slowbro. Okay, I think I'm going to win. Jinx goes down. Next is Lapras. I use Surf. Omastar doesn't do enough damage. Lapras uses Hydro Pump, but because of Amnesia, Omastar survives with 5 hit points and defeats Lorelei. This was a lucky win. Even with full badge boost set up against Agatha, I'm still not going to be able to one-shot all of her Pokemon, most specifically the final Gengar. I do go to +4 here so that I can two-shot the Gengar as well as outspeed it, but this is essentially as good as I can get things. This does leave Omastar open to some risk against the final Gengar, like it using Hypnosis, then spamming Dream Eater twice, Confuse Ray, followed by 2 Psychics knocking Omastar out. I guess this loss makes up for the good luck that I had on Lorelei. I am able to beat her on my next attempt with Omastar. For Lance, Blizzard in the place of Mimic, knock out the Gyarados right away, and then just spam Blizzard on everything else. Aerodactyl can't do enough damage, and Omastar with Carbos has 119 speed, so it's easily moving first against Dragonite. Now, before the champion, I want to quickly pause and just post some screenshots from Discord. I spent like 2 hours one morning thinking about how Omastar should fight the champion. I was really unconvinced with Zealous-Pawn's solution. His moveset was Surf, Withdraw, Blizzard, and Body Slam, but I found this to be too risky for my liking, and so I tried to root in Rest to the playthrough for Omastar. The problem is, adding the trainer in the SSN doesn't really synergize with anything else in the route, it just helps here for the champion. You don't get to skip a rare candy earlier on, you don't get better damage ranges for any of the earlier fights, and because of that I was hesitant to add him, but I went through and I analyzed all the time costs. It takes 25 seconds to obtain and teach Rest to your Pokemon. Resetting with Omastar against the champion should Body Slam not turn 1 paralyze the Alakazam costs 18 seconds. And if you don't paralyze the Alakazam, then you're usually going to be defeated by the Cloyster, and that reset costs 51 seconds. If I choose to use Rest during the battle with Omastar, it costs me 8 seconds during the battle. This is something I don't think people always consider. So if I have to use Rest in the battle to survive 2 or 3 times, then there's a better case for not using Rest at all. But my intention was to only use Rest once, as soon as I got to the Executor to heal up after any damage that Alakazam dealt. So if we consider the time to obtain, teach Rest, as well as the cost of using it in battle, it's 33 seconds in total. But that's a major investment for Omastar, which is getting an incredible time. There is a third viable option here, which is not paralyzing the Alakazam with Body Slam, just running Horn Drill to one-shot the Cloyster later into the fight. By the way, Omastar actually has a better chance to knock out the Alakazam when it uses Surf. And just looking at these damage ranges at level 58, that was another reason I was considering Rest. It wants to use Surf on pretty much everything, and Body Slam only on Alakazam for paralysis. If I run Rest in Body Slam's place, I don't really give anything up here, except for the time that it takes to get Rest. And for this reason, the Rest strategy is always going to be slower if it gets the best possible luck. Whereas this strategy running Body Slam is always going to have a better ceiling, but I think it's going to perform worse on average. I told Zealous-Pawn that I was going to run the Rest strategy and try to get a safe playthrough with a decent result before getting riskier. After all, I only have limited time to do these playthroughs, so picking my strategy sometimes depends on the amount of time that I can allocate to each Pokemon. In this case though, once I got to the SSN, I just completely decided to skip Rest, so let's see what happens when I play the champion with the riskier but overall faster strategy. Sandslash goes down to Surf in 1 hit. Alakazam comes out, misses Kinesis, Body Slam does half, paralyzes, I move first, knock out the Alakazam and move on to Executor. Okay, that is the perfect start to the fight. Then I can set up Withdraw here. It just spams Leech Seed, I don't care. I go all the way to +6, one shot with Blizzard, Surf one hits Magneton, Cloyster goes down with 2 Surfs. It even misses Clamp, not even wasting time with text or Leech Seed animations. And then Surf 2 shots the Flareon, but it just goes for Reflect, and Omastar gets a time of 39 minutes and 23 seconds. It had 3 resets, finished the game at level 59 with a game time of 2 hours and 30 minutes. This was my 3rd run with Omastar, and I did come back and do a 4th playthrough just to see if I could improve on this time, but unfortunately I wasn't able to. Here are the final results that I was able to get with all 3 of these Pokemon. I do want to re-emphasize here that the game time metric is taken from the champion split rather than from the Hall of Fame, so that's why there's a discrepancy here, but I actually think that gives us a window into something else, because Omastar and Kabutops have the same game time when they beat the champion. So the difference between these two is literally frames. Kabutops had had slightly more, incrementing the clock over the next minute by the time it got to the Hall of Fame, whereas Omastar just snuck in under the threshold and got 2 hours and 30 minutes. Looking at the timeline graphs, I just get sad for Aerodactyl. It is nowhere near the other two fossils. Here are the run summaries for all 3 of these Pokemon, just in case you want a quick snapshot of how to do these playthroughs. Now, let's rank all 3 of them in the tier list. Today, Aerodactyl is able to move out of the F tier. But where is it going with its 55-minute time? Well, right in front of Rapidash behind Charmander and Bellsprout. Hilariously, it ended up being 1 second slower than Charmander and 6 seconds slower than Bellsprout. You know, even though I improved Aerodactyl's ranking, I still kind of feel bad for it with these comparisons. Now let's move on to the good Pokemon. What about Kabutops? Well, it wasn't able to beat Omastar today, which makes me a little bit concerned about continuing to choose the Dome fossil. I switched over because of its victory last time. I'm gonna keep picking it though. I like Kabutops' design way more than Omastar. Plus, it's channel tradition now. Unfortunately today, the scythe-wielding Pokemon wasn't quite able to get into the S tier. It gets the 2nd placement in the A tier, falling just behind Sandslash. And I mean just, because it is 1 second slower than the ground type. Honestly, I'm kind of happy with this placement because Sandslash also has slashing claws similar to Scythes. It's a ground type, Kabutops is a rock type, they're both brown. They seem made for each other. Now for the victor of this video. Omastar earns itself an S tier placement, although it isn't able to beat out Gengar, so it takes the last spot in this tier, only ranking above Kabutops by a single species. If I sat down, played these Pokemon again, and gave them each 2 runs, say on a stream, I don't know who would win. I think that Kabutops could, and I also think that Omastar could. Each of them has flaws and moments where they can get resets, losing time, and it's very hard to predict which one is going to perform worse. After all, their game times are almost identical with these routes. As far as a duo that the player has to choose between, this is one of the best balanced duos in the entire series. Omastar excels with high special and badge boosts, and Kabutops crushes with high attack, body slam, and swords dance. With these Pokemon in the tier list, I am now at 136 out of 151. I have also done playthroughs with every single rock type in the game. I'm honestly a bit surprised at how evenly distributed the rock types are throughout all the tiers. Omastar is the best, Kabutops is 2nd, and Golem is 3rd. In very last is Onix, although I think I'll be able to do better with it when I replay it at some point in the future. Rhyhorn and Geodude are both in the Surge tier, and that makes sense. They're pretty awful first stage Pokemon, and they suffer because of their low speed stat, as well as the fact that they take 4 times damage from water and grass moves. Interestingly, there's a pattern forming here with types. The rock types that have the water type outrank their rock ground counterparts. Omanyte and Kabuto outperform Geodude, Rhyhorn, and Onix, and Omastar and Kabutops outperform all of the other rock types. Aerodactyl is the weird one, and it falls neatly in the middle of this pack, outpacing the first stage Pokemon, but falling short of all of the final forms and the middle evolution Graveler. As far as water types go, I have 4 left to do. Kingler needs its first playthrough because I have never run it on the channel, and then Blastoise, Slowpoke, and Psyduck all need redos. I will be completing all of those runs in November, so stay tuned. The next couple months are going to be very exciting. If you support me directly through Patreon or YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you tomorrow when I play Pokemon Yellow using only Slowpoke.